Hey everyone, before we get started, make sure to like the video and leave a comment telling me where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories like this one. My name is Laura Bennett. What happened to me at Fish Lake National Forest in Utah still keeps me up at night, and I need to tell someone about it before I lose my mind completely. I rented the cabin in late September 2024. It wasn't supposed to be anything dramatic, just 3 weeks away from Portland to finish my manuscript. My editor had been patient, but after 2 missed deadlines, I needed to deliver something or kiss my advance goodbye. The cabin listing promised solitude, no cell service, and enough distance from civilization that I could actually focus. The property sat on 12 acres at the edge of Fish Lake, surrounded by aspens that were just starting to turn. The owner, a woman named Diane, met me at the gate with keys and a lengthy explanation of the septic system that I barely absorbed. She was in her 60s, weathered in that way people get when they've spent their whole lives outdoors. "You picked a good time," she said as we walked up to the cabin. "Tourist season's over. You won't see another soul out here until deer hunting starts in November." That's exactly what I wanted to hear. The cabin itself was small but well-maintained. 1 bedroom, a kitchen with a gas stove, a wood-burning fireplace, and a desk positioned in front of a large window overlooking the forest. Diane showed me where everything was: the generator, the propane tanks, the axe for splitting wood. "One thing," she said as she was leaving, "don't go walking too far into the trees after dark. Easy to get turned around, even with a flashlight. Had a guest a couple years back who wandered off and it took a search and rescue half a day to find them." I assured her I'd be careful. I'm not an idiot about these things. The first few days were exactly what I needed. I woke up early, made coffee, and wrote until my hands cramped. No internet to distract me. No phone buzzing with notifications. Just the sound of wind in the aspens and my fingers on the keyboard. By day 4, I'd written more than I had in the previous 2 months combined. I usually worked until late afternoon, then took a walk around the property before making dinner. The aspens were beautiful, their leaves flashing silver and gold in the breeze. Sometimes I'd see deer moving through the trees in the distance. Once, I spotted what I thought was a fox. On the evening of the 5th day, I saw her for the first time. I was coming back from my walk, following the dirt road that led to the cabin. The sun was getting low, sending long shadows across the ground. I was maybe 50 yards from the porch when I noticed someone standing in the trees to my left. I stopped. My first thought was that Diane had come back to check on something, but this woman was too far away to see clearly, and she didn't move or call out. She just stood there between 2 aspens, facing in my direction. "Hello," I called. No response. The woman didn't move. I felt a prickle of unease. The property was supposed to be private, and even if someone was hiking through the national forest, why would they just stand there staring? "Can I help you?" I tried again. Nothing. The woman remained motionless. I started walking toward her slowly. As I got closer, I could make out more details. She was wearing dark clothing. I couldn't tell if it was a coat or a dress. Her hair appeared to be pulled back. She was pale, very pale. When I was maybe 30 feet away, she turned and walked deeper into the trees. Not quickly, not running, just a steady walk, weaving between the aspens until the shadows swallowed her up. I stopped at the edge of the tree line and stared after her. Every rational part of my brain told me to go back to the cabin. But curiosity, or maybe stupidity, made me follow. I pushed through the aspens, stepping over fallen branches and patches of undergrowth. The woman had vanished. I couldn't see her anywhere. I called out again, feeling foolish, but got no response. After a few minutes of searching, I gave up and headed back. The whole thing left me unsettled. I spent the evening checking the windows and doors, making sure everything was locked. I told myself it was probably just a hiker who didn't feel like chatting. Utah has thousands of miles of public land. People wander wherever they want, but something about the way she'd stood there, perfectly still, watching me. I didn't sleep well that night. The next morning, I convinced myself I'd overreacted. I made coffee, sat down at my desk, and got back to work. The manuscript was finally coming together. I wrote for 6 straight hours, barely noticing the time pass. Around 3 in the afternoon, I stood up to stretch and happened to glance out the window. The woman was back. This time, she was closer, standing at the edge of the clearing about 40 feet from the cabin. Same dark clothing, same pale face, same absolute stillness. I felt my stomach drop. I walked to the window and stared at her. She stared back, or at least she was facing in my direction. I couldn't quite make out her features clearly enough to see if she was actually looking at me or just staring into space. I stood there for maybe 2 minutes, my heart hammering, trying to decide what to do. Finally, I walked to the front door and opened it. "Hey!" I shouted. "This is private property." The woman didn't react. I stepped out onto the porch. "I'm serious. You need to leave." Still nothing. I started walking toward her, my anger overriding my fear. "I don't know what your problem is, but—" She turned and walked into the trees again. Same measured pace as before. Not hurrying, not looking back. I followed her to the tree line but stopped there, watching her fade into the shadows. This time, I didn't try to pursue her. Something about the whole situation felt wrong in a way I couldn't articulate. I went back inside and locked the door. The rest of the day, I couldn't focus on writing. I kept getting up to check the windows, scanning the trees for any sign of movement. I didn't see her again, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was out there somewhere, watching. That night, I pulled the curtains closed on every window. I built a fire in the fireplace even though it wasn't that cold, just for the comfort of it. I tried to read but couldn't concentrate. Around 10, I gave up and went to bed. I woke up sometime after midnight. I'm not sure exactly when. The cabin was dark except for the dying glow from the fireplace. I lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what had woken me. Then I heard it. Footsteps on the porch. Slow, deliberate footsteps. Walking back and forth, back and forth. I held my breath and listened. The footsteps continued for what felt like an eternity, though it was probably only a minute or two. Then they stopped. Silence. I waited, every muscle in my body tense. After about 10 minutes, I slowly got out of bed and crept to the bedroom door. I could see through to the living room, could see the front door from where I stood. Nothing. No sound. No movement. I spent the rest of the night sitting up in bed with the lights on. When morning came, I told myself I'd imagined it. Deer sometimes walked onto the porch. Diane had mentioned that. Or maybe it was a raccoon. The cabin was surrounded by wildlife. Of course, I'd hear things at night. But when I went outside to get wood for the stove, I saw them. Muddy footprints on the porch. Human footprints. Small feet like a woman's shoe. They started at the porch steps, walked the length of the porch, turned around and walked back, over and over. The same path, at least a dozen times. Then they stopped at the window next to the front door, the window that looked into the living room. I stared at those footprints for a long time. My hands were shaking. I wanted to pack up my car and leave right then, but something stopped me. Maybe pride, maybe stubbornness, maybe just the desperate need to finish my manuscript and salvage my career. I cleaned off the footprints with a bucket of water and went back inside. The next few days were quiet. I didn't see the woman again. I heard things at night, branches snapping, wind in the trees, animals moving around, but nothing that sounded like footsteps. I started to relax again. I was also making real progress on the book. Whatever else was happening, the isolation was working. I was writing 10, 12 pages a day. My characters were finally coming alive. The story was clicking into place. On day 11, I saw her again. I'd gone for my afternoon walk and was heading back to the cabin when I spotted her. This time, she was standing much closer, maybe 20 feet from the porch, right out in the open where there was no way I could miss her. I stopped dead. We stared at each other across the clearing. Now that she was closer, I could see her more clearly. She was youngish, maybe 30s or early 40s, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She wore what looked like a long black coat and dark pants. Her skin was very pale, almost white, and her face was blank. That's the only way I can describe it. No expression at all. Not angry, not curious, not anything. Just blank. "Who are you?" I called out. She didn't answer. "What do you want?" "Nothing." We stood there for maybe 30 seconds, though it felt much longer. Then, without any warning, she smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It wasn't a threatening smile. It was just wrong. Too wide. Too fixed. Like someone who'd forgotten how smiling was supposed to work and was approximating it from memory. I felt ice water run down my spine. She held the smile for another few seconds, then turned and walked away. Not into the trees this time. She walked down the dirt road, the same road I'd driven in on, heading away from the cabin. I watched her until she disappeared around a bend. I went inside and locked the door. That was when I started to seriously consider leaving. This was beyond weird hiker behavior. This was something else entirely. But I was so close to finishing the manuscript. 2 more weeks, maybe less if I pushed hard. And besides, what would I tell Diane? That I was being stalked by a woman who hadn't actually done anything threatening, who probably hadn't even trespassed, given that she'd been standing on the road, which technically wasn't private property. I talked myself into staying. I regret that now. The next time I saw her, she was closer. It was late afternoon, and I was making dinner. I'd put water on to boil for pasta and was chopping vegetables when I happened to glance out the kitchen window. She was standing about 10 feet from the window, looking in, watching me. I dropped the knife. It clattered on the counter. We stared at each other through the glass. She had that same blank expression, that same too pale skin. She didn't move, didn't blink, just watched. I don't know how long we stayed like that. It felt like forever. Finally, I forced myself to move. I walked to the window and pulled the curtain shut. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely grip the fabric. I heard her footsteps on the porch again that night. The same slow, measured walking, back and forth. But this time she didn't just walk. She stopped at each window, and I could hear her pressing against the glass. Not knocking, not trying to break in, just pressing, breathing. I sat in the bedroom with my back against the wall and my phone in my hand, uselessly searching for a signal I knew I wouldn't find. The nearest town with cell service was 40 minutes away. I could drive there. I should drive there. But I didn't. When morning came and I checked the porch, there were no footprints this time. Nothing to prove she'd been there. I started wondering if I was losing my mind. The isolation was getting to me. I was spending too much time alone, letting my imagination run wild. Writers do that. We're good at creating horror where none exists. I tried to work that day but couldn't focus. Around noon, I gave up and decided to drive into town. I needed to see other people, hear other voices, confirm that I was still connected to the real world. I grabbed my keys and walked out to where I'd parked my car, about 20 yards from the cabin. All 4 tires were flat. Not punctured, not slashed, just flat, like someone had let all the air out while I was sleeping. I stood there staring at them, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I spun around. She was standing at the edge of the clearing, watching me. "What do you want?" I screamed at her. "What the fuck do you want?" She tilted her head slightly. Then she smiled that horrible smile again. And then, and this is the part that still makes my blood run cold, she spoke. "To help you," she said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. "I'm here to help you." "I don't need your help," I said. My voice was shaking. "Leave me alone." "But you do," she said. "You need so much help, Laura." Hearing her say my name made my legs go weak. "How do you know my name?" She didn't answer. She just kept smiling, that awful smile. "Who are you?" I asked. "I'm Laura," she said. I felt something break inside my chest. "No, you're not. I'm Laura Bennett," she said. "I came here to write, to finish my book. I've been here for 11 days. "Stop it. I'm Laura Bennett," she repeated. "I'm 34 years old. I live in Portland. I'm divorced. No children. My last book didn't sell well. My editor is losing patience. I needed to get away. I needed to focus." Every word was true. Every detail was correct. But hearing them come out of her mouth, in that flat, dead voice, "You're not real," I said. "You're not real." She took a step closer. "I'm the only real thing here." I ran. I don't remember making the decision to run. I just found myself sprinting back to the cabin, slamming the door behind me, locking it. I dragged the kitchen table in front of the door. I closed every curtain, locked every window. Then I sat on the floor and tried to breathe. Hours passed. The sun set. Darkness fell. I didn't turn on any lights. I just sat there in the dark, listening. Around midnight, I heard her on the porch again, walking, back and forth, back and forth. Then she spoke. Her voice was muffled by the door, but I could hear her clearly enough. "I know you're scared," she said. "I understand. I'm scared too. But you don't need to be. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help you." I didn't respond. "You're tired, Laura. So tired. You've been fighting for so long. Fighting to write. Fighting to be good enough. Fighting to prove yourself. Don't you want to rest? Go away," I whispered. "I can't," she said. "Because I'm you. The you that you're trying so hard not to become. The you that gave up. That stopped fighting. That let go. That's not true, isn't it? Look at yourself. Hiding in a cabin in the middle of nowhere. Running away from your life. From your failures. From everything that's too hard to face. I'm working. I'm writing. Are you? Or are you just procrastinating in a different location? When was the last time you actually looked at what you've written? I hadn't. I realized that suddenly. I'd been typing for days, watching the word count climb, but I hadn't actually read any of it. I'd been so focused on finishing, on hitting my page goals, that I hadn't stopped to check if any of it made sense. I pulled out my laptop with shaking hands and opened my manuscript file. The pages were full of the same sentence, repeated over and over again. "She's standing in the trees watching me." Thousands of times. Page after page after page. "She's standing in the trees watching me." I slammed the laptop shut. "You see?" Her voice came through the door. "You know. You've always known. This isn't helping. This isn't working. You're not getting better. You're getting worse. Stop it. Let me in, Laura. Let me help you. Let me show you what comes next." "No, you don't have a choice. I'm already here. I've always been here. Every time you look in a mirror. Every time you catch your reflection in a window. That moment of not recognizing yourself. That's me. That's the you that you're trying to deny." I covered my ears. It didn't help. I could still hear her. I'm the you that looks in the mirror and sees nothing worth saving, she continued. I'm the you that knows this isn't going to work out. That knows you're not good enough. That knows you're wasting your time. I'm calling for help, I said. I grabbed my phone even though I knew it was useless. I'm calling the police. With what? You have no signal. You have no car. You have nothing. You have no one. That's why you came here, remember? Because you have nothing left. She was right. I realized that with horrible clarity. I had nothing. My marriage had fallen apart. My career was circling the drain. I'd burned bridges with most of my friends through my own self-absorption and bitterness. I'd come here because I had nowhere else to go, and nothing else to try. Let me in, she said again. Let me help you finish this. I don't know how long I sat there. Hours, maybe. The voice eventually stopped, but I could still hear footsteps on the porch. Walking, walking, walking. When dawn finally came, I gathered what little courage I had left and opened the door. She was standing on the porch, facing away from me, looking out at the forest. I'm leaving, I said. My voice cracked. I don't care about the tires. I'll walk if I have to. She turned to look at me. In the morning light, I could see her face more clearly than ever before. She looked exactly like me. Same eyes, same nose, same mouth, same everything. Except for the expression. She looked hollow, empty, like someone had scooped out everything inside and left only the shell. You can try, she said, but you'll come back. You always come back. What do you mean? This is where you end up, Laura. This is where all the running and hiding leads, this cabin, this forest, this moment. You can leave 1,000 times, and you'll always end up back here. You're crazy. No, I'm aware. There's a difference. She walked past me into the cabin. I was too stunned to stop her. She sat down at my desk and looked at my laptop. You need to finish your book, she said. That's why you came here, so finish it. I can't. You can. I'll help you. That's what I'm here for. She opened my laptop and started typing. I watched from the doorway, unable to move. Her fingers flew across the keys, words appearing on the screen faster than seemed possible. After a few minutes, she stopped and looked at me. Come see, she said. I walked over slowly. On the screen was a new document, a story, written in my style, with my voice, but somehow better than anything I'd written before. It was good. It was really good. See, she said, I can help you. We can finish this together. How? By accepting what you are, what we are, by stopping the pretense. You don't need to run anymore. You don't need to fight. Just let go. Let me in. We can do this together. I stared at the screen. The words pulled at something deep inside me. A longing, a desire to give up, to stop trying so hard, to just let someone else take over. What happens if I say yes? I asked. You finish your book, you go home, you get your life back. Everything goes back to normal. And you? She smiled. Not the horrible smile from before. A real smile. Sad and tired and knowing. I stay here, she said, waiting for the next time you need me. I should have said no. I should have run. I should have done anything except what I did. But I was so tired. So incredibly tired. Okay, I whispered. She stood up and walked toward me. When she was inches away, she reached out and touched my face. Her hand was cold. Thank you, she said. Then she stepped forward, and I felt her merge with me. It wasn't painful. It was almost a relief. Like setting down a heavy weight I'd been carrying for years. I blinked. I was standing at the desk. My laptop was open. I was typing. The words were flowing. Better than ever before. Better than I'd ever imagined I could write. I worked for the next 3 days without stopping. I barely ate, barely slept, But the book was coming together. It was beautiful. It was everything I'd wanted it to be. When I finally typed the last sentence, I sat back and looked at what I'd created. 200,000 words. A complete novel. The best thing I'd ever written. I packed my things. I changed the flat tires. They weren't actually flat when I checked, which didn't make sense, but I didn't question it. I drove away from the cabin without looking back. The drive home took 6 hours. When I pulled into my apartment parking lot in Portland, I felt lighter than I had in years. I sent the manuscript to my editor that night. She called me the next day, breathless with excitement. It was brilliant, she said. It was going to be huge. She'd already set up meetings with marketing. This was the book that would make my career. Everything went back to normal. Better than normal. The book sold. Reviews were incredible. I started getting interview requests. My agent negotiated a 2-book deal with a major publisher. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm sitting at my desk trying to write, I catch my reflection in the computer screen. And, for just a moment, I don't recognize the person looking back at me. She has my face, my hair, my eyes. But when she smiles, it's that too wide smile, that knowing smile. And I realize that I never left the cabin. Not really. I'm still there, standing in the trees, watching, waiting. The woman sitting here, writing this, finishing this sentence, she's not me. She's what I left behind. She's the hollow thing that took my place. And sometimes, on quiet nights, when I look in the bathroom mirror, I see myself standing in the doorway behind my reflection, the real me. Still in that cabin, still at that desk, still typing the same sentence over and over again. She's standing in the trees watching me. I'm still there. I never left. And neither will you. Story 2. My name is Jacob Reed. I'm writing this from a hospital room in Kalispell, Montana, 3 weeks after what happened at Flathead Lake. The doctors say I'm suffering from severe dehydration, hypothermia, and what they're calling acute stress disorder. They don't understand. They weren't there. They didn't hear the whispers. I need to write this down while I still remember it clearly. Already, some of the details are starting to blur at the edges, like my brain is trying to protect me from what we experienced. But I can't let myself forget. Someone needs to know what's out there, near the Flathead National Forest, at that RV campground off Highway 35. We left Seattle on August 14, 2024. Me, my wife Amanda, and our 2 friends, Derek and his girlfriend Chloe. Derek and I had been college roommates, and even though we'd both settled into the 9-to-5 grind after graduation, we tried to take one big trip together each year. This time, Derek suggested Montana. He'd been there once as a kid and remembered how peaceful it was. Peaceful feels like a cruel joke now. We rented a 30-foot RV from a place in Seattle. Amanda had never been camping in anything bigger than a tent, and she was excited about having an actual bathroom and kitchen. The plan was simple. Drive to Flathead Lake, spend 5 days at a campground Derek had found online, do some hiking, maybe rent a boat. Nothing complicated. The drive took about 9 hours. We stopped in Spokane for lunch and made it to the campground around 6 in the evening. The place was called Whispering Pines RV Park, which should have been our first warning, but at the time it just seemed like a typical outdoorsy name. It sat on a small peninsula jutting into the lake, surrounded by dense forest on 3 sides. The woman who checked us in was probably in her 60s, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her name tag said Diane. She barely looked at us as she processed our reservation, just slid a map of the campground across the counter and circled our spot in red marker. Spot 47, she said. All the way at the end of the North Loop. You'll have plenty of privacy. Perfect, Derek said. We were hoping for something quiet. Diane's hand paused for just a second before she finished circling the spot. When she looked up, her expression hadn't changed, but something about her eyes seemed different. Harder, maybe. You'll get quiet, she said. Just remember, if you hear anything strange at night, stay inside your RV. Don't go looking. Amanda laughed nervously. Strange like what? Bears? Sure, Diane said, though her tone suggested she meant something else entirely. Bears. We drove through the campground slowly, following the winding road past rows of RVs and fifth wheels. Most of the spots closer to the main building were occupied. Families with kids, retirees with expensive rigs, the usual camping crowd. But as we got further from the office, the sites became more spread out and less populated. By the time we reached the North Loop, we hadn't seen another camper in at least 5 minutes. Spot 47 was isolated. The nearest occupied site was probably a quarter-mile back, and beyond our spot, the road simply ended at a turnaround. The lake was visible through the trees about 50 yards away, and behind us, the forest pressed in close. This is perfect, Derek said as he guided the RV into the spot. Look at this view. He wasn't wrong. The evening sun was turning the lake orange and gold, and the mountains on the far shore looked almost purple in the fading light. It was beautiful, peaceful, just like Derek had promised. We spent the first hour getting set up, leveling the RV, hooking up the water and electricity, extending the awning. By the time we finished, it was getting dark. We made dinner inside, pasta with jarred sauce, nothing fancy. We'd planned to sit around a campfire, but none of us felt like dealing with it after the long drive. Instead, we played cards at the dinette table and killed a bottle of wine. Around 11, Chloe and Derek retired to the bedroom in the back of the RV. Amanda and I converted the dinette and couch into beds. It wasn't the most comfortable setup, but we'd manage for a few nights. I was almost asleep when I heard it for the first time. At first, I thought it was wind in the trees, just a low murmuring sound. But as I lay there listening, I realized it had a rhythm to it, almost like speech. I sat up quietly, trying not to wake Amanda, and listened harder. The sound was coming from outside, somewhere in the trees behind the RV. It was definitely voices, multiple voices, but I couldn't make out any words. The language was wrong somehow. The syllables all harsh and guttural, nothing like English or any other language I'd heard before. I checked my phone. 2:06 a.m. Way too late for other campers to be wandering around. The whispering continued for maybe 5 minutes, never getting louder or closer, just maintaining that same low, it stopped abruptly, mid-word, like someone had flipped a switch. I stayed awake for another hour, listening for it to start again, but the forest remained silent. Eventually, I convinced myself I'd been half asleep and imagined it. I didn't mention it to Amanda in the morning. Day 2 started normally. We had breakfast outside under the awning, coffee and instant oatmeal, then drove into Polson, the nearest town, to stock up on supplies. Amanda wanted to find a place that rented kayaks. Derek needed to buy a new water bottle because he'd somehow left his at home. The town was small but touristy, the kind of place where every other building is either a restaurant or a shop selling Montana-themed merchandise. We found a rental place and reserved 2 kayaks for the next day, then grabbed lunch at a diner that seemed popular with locals. Our waitress was a younger woman, maybe mid-20s, with a Montana State University sweatshirt. When she brought our food, Derek asked her if she knew any good hiking trails nearby. "Depends what you're looking for," she said. "There's a bunch of trails in the forest, but honestly, I'd stick to the lake. Better views, less." She trailed off, searching for a word. "Less what?" Amanda asked. "Just less," the waitress said finally. The forest gets pretty dense back there, easy to get turned around. After lunch, we drove back to the campground and spent the afternoon by the lake. The water was cold but clear, and we swam until our lips turned blue. Later, we tried fishing from the shore with some gear Derek had brought, but none of us knew what we were doing and didn't catch anything. Dinner was hot dogs and chips, eaten around a campfire as the sun set. This was what we'd come for. Just sitting around talking and laughing. No work emails, no responsibilities. For a few hours, everything felt perfect. Derek told stories about his job at an architecture firm, exaggerating the incompetence of his boss until we were all in tears laughing. Chloe talked about the yoga studio she was trying to open. Amanda and I made plans for renovating our kitchen when we got home. Around 10, Chloe yawned and announced she was going to bed. Derek followed her a few minutes later. Amanda and I stayed up, finishing the last of the beer and watching the fire die down to embers. This was a good idea, Amanda said, leaning against my shoulder. We should do this more often. Yeah, I agreed. It's nice to unplug for a while. We went inside around 11. I was tired enough that I fell asleep almost immediately. I woke to the whispers at 2:06 a.m. exactly. I know because the first thing I did was check my phone. This time they were louder, more insistent, and they weren't just behind the RV. They surrounded us, coming from all directions. I could hear them moving through the trees, multiple voices speaking in that same incomprehensible language. Amanda was awake too. I could tell by her breathing. "Jacob," she whispered. "Do you hear that?" "Yeah." "What is it?" "I don't know. Other campers maybe. That's not English." She was right, of course, but I didn't want to admit it. Could be foreign tourists. This is a popular area. We lay there in the dark, listening. The voices seemed to circle the RV, never getting closer but never moving away either. Every so often, I'd hear what sounded like footsteps in the dried pine needles, but they were too light, too irregular to be human footsteps. Then Amanda grabbed my arm. "The window," she hissed. I looked at the small window above our makeshift bed. A shadow passed across it, blocking out the faint starlight. Then another shadow. Then several more, moving past in a steady stream. My heart was hammering now. I wanted to get up and look, to see what was out there. But I remembered what Diane had said. If you hear anything strange at night, stay inside your RV. Don't go looking. The whispers continued for 20 minutes this time before stopping with that same abrupt cutoff. The shadows stopped moving past the window. The forest went silent. We didn't sleep the rest of that night. In the morning, I went outside to inspect the area around the RV. The ground was covered in pine needles and dried leaves. Too much debris to show clear footprints. But I walked a wide circle anyway, looking for any sign of who or what had been out there. I found nothing. No footprints, no disturbed vegetation, nothing out of place. It was like whatever we'd heard had left no trace. Derek and Chloe emerged from the back bedroom around 8. They looked well-rested and happy. "You guys sleep okay?" Derek asked, stretching. I glanced at Amanda. She shook her head slightly. "Fine," I said. "You, like a rock. Best sleep I've had in months." So they hadn't heard it. The bedroom was at the far end of the RV, and Derek had mentioned he always slept with earplugs because Chloe snored. That explained it, but it also meant Amanda and I were on our own. We'd planned to take the kayaks out that morning, but Amanda pulled me aside after breakfast. "I want to leave," she said quietly. "Something's wrong here. We heard some weird sounds. That's all." "That wasn't just sounds, Jacob. There was something out there. Multiple somethings. Probably just animals. Or other campers screwing around. You don't believe that." She was right. I didn't. But I also didn't want to be the one to ruin everyone's trip because we'd gotten spooked in the middle of the night. Let's give it another day, I said. If we hear it again tonight, we'll talk to Derek and Chloe tomorrow. Fair? Amanda didn't look happy, but she agreed. We picked up the kayaks and spent most of the day on the lake. The water was calm, the weather was perfect, and being out in the open sunshine made the previous night seem less threatening. By late afternoon, I'd almost convinced myself we'd overreacted. We returned the kayaks at 5 and stopped in Polson for dinner at a pizza place. When we got back to the campground around 8, I noticed Diane's pickup truck parked outside the office. The lights were on inside, so I told the others I'd catch up with them in a minute. Diane was behind the counter, working on what looked like paperwork. She looked up when I entered, and I saw her expression shift. Surprise, maybe, or concern. "Everything all right at your site?" she asked. "Yeah, fine. I just had a question. Last night, around 2 in the morning, did you hear anything unusual? Like voices?" Her pen stopped moving. She set it down carefully. "You heard them. It wasn't a question. My stomach dropped. "What are they?" I asked. Diane was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was lower, like she didn't want to be overheard even though we were alone. "No one really knows," she said. "They've been here as long as anyone can remember. Some people say it's wind playing tricks in the trees. Others say it's the forest itself, or spirits of the Salish Kootenai people who used to live here. All I know is that every few years someone at Spot 47 hears them. Usually just for a night or two, and then they stop. Why Spot 47? It's the furthest spot from the office, closest to the old part of the forest. Whatever they are, they don't come near where there's too many people. Have they ever hurt anyone?" Diane's hesitation was answer enough. "Not directly," she said finally. "But 15 years ago, a couple stayed at that spot. They heard the whispers. Third night, the husband went outside to see what was making the sound. They found him the next morning at the edge of the forest. He was alive, but wrong. Couldn't speak anymore, just made these clicking sounds in the back of his throat. His eyes were different too, pupils all dilated, like he was looking at something no one else could see. They took him to a hospital in Missoula, ran every test imaginable. Never found anything physically wrong with him. Where is he now? State facility in Warm Springs. Still there, far as I know." I felt sick. "Why do you keep that spot available? Why not close it off? The owners won't let me. They say I'm being superstitious. And honestly, most people never hear anything. You could have 10 groups stay there without any issues, then the 11th hears them. There's no pattern to it. We're leaving tomorrow," I said. "Good," Diane said. "That's good. Just tonight, if you hear them again, don't go outside. Don't try to see them. And don't let them hear you talking back. What happens if they hear us? I don't know. No one who's talked back has been willing to say what happened after." I walked back to the RV in the dying light, my mind racing. I should have told the others everything right then. Should have insisted we pack up and leave immediately. But when I got back, Derek had the grill going, and Chloe was inside making margaritas, and they both looked so happy. I convinced myself we could make it through one more night. We'd leave first thing in the morning. Amanda could tell something was wrong the moment she saw my face. I shook my head slightly, indicating we'd talk later, and she understood. We ate dinner outside. Grilled chicken and a salad Chloe had thrown together. Derek had brought a Bluetooth speaker and was playing music from his phone. Classic rock that echoed across the empty campsites around us. We were probably being too loud for a campground, but there was no one nearby to complain. Around 10, Derek announced he was beat and going to bed. Chloe went with him. Amanda and I cleaned up dinner, moving in silence. Once we were sure Derek and Chloe were asleep, We went outside and sat in the camping chairs, speaking in low voices. I told her everything Diane had said. Amanda listened without interrupting, her face growing paler. "We need to wake them up and leave right now," she said when I finished. "It's almost midnight. We've been drinking. I'm not driving this thing in the dark. Then we all sleep in the truck. Amanda, we can't all fit in the truck. And besides, Diane said they don't hurt people directly. If we just stay inside, that man ended up in a mental institution, Jacob, because he went outside. We won't go outside. No matter what we hear, we stay in the RV until sunrise, then we leave. 6 hours. We can do this." Amanda looked like she wanted to argue more, but she finally nodded. We went inside, locked the door, and closed all the curtains. I checked my phone. 11:47 p.m. The whispers started at 2:06 a.m. exactly. This time they were so loud I sat bolt upright, thinking someone was standing right outside the RV. Amanda was already awake, sitting up with her arms wrapped around her knees. The voices surrounded us completely. Dozens of them, maybe more. They spoke in that same harsh, guttural language. But tonight there was something different about it. Tonight, the whispers had a rhythm, like a chant or an invocation, and they were getting closer. I heard footsteps on the RV's stairs, soft, padding footsteps. Then something scratched at the door. Not knocking, just scratching, like nails dragging across metal. Amanda grabbed my hand. Her palm was slick. The scratching stopped. For about 30 seconds, there was complete silence. Then the whispers started again, but this time they were different. This time they were speaking English. "Jacob," the voices whispered. "Amanda, Derek, Chloe." They knew our names. "Come outside, Jacob. Come see. Come see what we have to show you." The voice that said my name sounded almost familiar, like someone I'd known once but couldn't quite place. It had a warm, inviting quality that made me want to stand up, to open the door. I felt myself starting to rise. Amanda yanked me back down. "Don't," she hissed. From the back bedroom, I heard Derek stirring. "What's going on?" "Stay in there," I called back, my voice shaking. "Don't come out here. Don't open any windows." "Jacob, what?" "Just trust me. Stay there and don't look outside." The whispers grew more insistent. More voices joined in, all calling our names now, overlapping each other until it became a cacophony. They scratched at the windows, at the door, at the sides of the RV. It sounded like hundreds of them out there, all trying to get in. Then Chloe screamed. I jumped up and ran to the back bedroom. Derek had the bedside lamp on. Chloe was pressed against the wall, pointing at the window above the bed. A face was pressed against the glass. It was human-shaped, but wrong. The skin was too pale, almost translucent, and stretched too tight across the bones. The eyes were completely black, no whites at all, and it was smiling, showing too many teeth arranged in too many rows. As I watched, another face appeared next to it, then another. They pressed against the window, leaving no condensation, no fingerprints. Just those terrible faces, all smiling. "What the fuck are they?" Derek said. His voice was high and tight with panic. "I don't know. Everyone, don't look at them. Close your eyes and don't look." I grabbed the blanket from the bed and threw it over the window, blocking the faces from view. But I could still hear them out there, scratching at the glass. We all huddled in the living area of the RV, the four of us pressed together on the couch. The scratching continued, moving around the RV in a circle. The whispers never stopped, constantly calling our names, begging us to come outside. At some point, I don't know exactly when, the scratching changed. It became more rhythmic, more deliberate. They were trying to pry the door open. I heard metal groan. The door frame was bending. "They're going to get in," Chloe sobbed. I looked around desperately for anything we could use as a weapon. The kitchen knives were in a drawer 10 feet away. Derek had some tools in the storage compartment outside, but that would mean opening the door. The door frame groaned again. I could see it bowing inward now. "The truck," I said. "We get in the truck and drive. Now." "They're right outside," Amanda said. "I know, but they want us to come to them. Maybe if we move fast enough." The door frame splintered. Not much, just a small crack, but it was enough to show that whatever was out there was strong enough to get through eventually. "Now," I said. "Everybody move." I grabbed the keys from the counter. The truck was parked right next to the RV, maybe 15 feet away. We could make it. We had to make it. I counted down from 3. On 1, I threw open the RV door and we ran. The whispers became screams. They came out of the forest, dozens of them. Those pale figures with their wrong faces and too many teeth. They moved wrong, too, their joints bending in directions that shouldn't be possible. Their movements too fast and too jerky. We ran for the truck. I had the key fob in my hand, mashing the unlock button. The lights flashed. 10 feet. 5 feet. One of the creatures grabbed Chloe's arm. She screamed and pulled away, but it held on. Its fingers were too long, too thin, with extra joints. Derek spun around and punched it in the face. His fist connected with a wet crunch, but the thing didn't seem to feel it. It just turned its head to look at Derek, still smiling. Then it opened its mouth wider than any mouth should open and screamed back at us. The sound was like metal scraping on metal, like nails on a chalkboard amplified 1,000 times. It drove through my skull and made my teeth ache. All 4 of us stumbled, hands over our ears. More of them emerged from the trees surrounding us. We were 5 feet from the truck, but we couldn't move. That scream had paralyzed us. One of them stepped forward. This one was taller than the others, its limbs even more distorted. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once. "Why do you run? We only want to talk. We have so much to tell you, so much to show you. Stay away from us," I managed to choke out. The tall one tilted its head, and I heard its neck vertebrae crack. "You came to our home. You slept in our forest. Don't you want to know what we are? Don't you want to understand?" "No," Amanda said. "We just want to leave. But it's too late for that now. You've heard us. You've spoken to us. You're part of us now. You'll always hear us." Jacob Reed. Amanda Reed. Derek Chen. Chloe Martinez. Even when you leave this place, you'll hear us whispering in the quiet moments. You'll see us in the shadows. You'll know we're there. The creature that was holding Chloe let go. They all started backing away, retreating into the forest. "Go," the tall one said. "Run back to your cities. Hide in your buildings. It won't matter. You're ours now." Then they were gone, vanishing into the trees so quickly it was like they'd never been there at all. The whispers faded to nothing. The forest became silent. We stood there for maybe 30 seconds, not quite believing it was over. Then Derek grabbed Chloe's hand and we all ran for the truck. I started the engine and floored it, not caring about the RV, not caring about our stuff, just driving as fast as I could down that winding campground road. We passed the office. The lights were off now. Diane's truck was gone. We reached the highway and turned south, putting as much distance between us and that place as possible. None of us spoke. Chloe was crying silently. Amanda stared straight ahead, her hand gripping mine so tightly I thought she might break bones. We drove to Missoula, checked into the first hotel we found, and spent the rest of the night huddled in one room with all the lights on. In the morning, Derek rented a different car to drive back to Seattle. We left the truck and the RV in the hotel parking lot. Let the rental company come get them. We weren't going back. That was 3 weeks ago. The doctors say I'm getting better, but they're wrong. Every night at 2:06 a.m. I wake up, and in the silence I hear them whispering. It's faint, barely audible, but it's there. Amanda hears them too. She doesn't sleep anymore. Neither does Derek. Chloe checked herself into a psychiatric facility after she tried to drive back to Flathead Lake. She said they were calling her home. The doctors think we all had some kind of shared psychotic episode, maybe triggered by carbon monoxide from the RV. They ran blood tests and brain scans. They found nothing wrong. But they're not listening at 2:06 a.m. They don't hear the whispers getting louder each night. They don't see the shadows that move wrong in my peripheral vision. They don't understand that those things were telling the truth. We're theirs now. We'll always be theirs. Sometimes I think about that man Diane mentioned, the one who went outside and came back wrong. I understand now why he couldn't talk anymore. What would be the point? How do you explain to people what you've seen when the explanation breaks every law of nature they've ever known? The worst part isn't the whispers or the shadows. The worst part is knowing that eventually the calling will become too strong to resist. One night, I'll get out of bed at 2:06 a.m., and I'll walk out my front door, and I'll follow the whispers back to that forest. Amanda knows it too. I can see it in her eyes when she looks at me. We're both just waiting now, counting down the days until we hear them clearly enough to understand what they want from us. Derek called yesterday. He sounded strange, distant. He said he's been having dreams about the forest, about walking deeper and deeper into the trees until he reaches a clearing where all of them are waiting. He said in the dream, he's happy to see them. He said he understands now that they're not monsters. He said they're just lonely. I told him not to listen, that it's what they want us to think. But even as I said it, I wondered if he was right. Maybe they're not evil. Maybe they're just different. And they've been alone in that forest for so long that they can't remember how to be anything else. Maybe that's what happened to the man in Warm Springs. Maybe he didn't come back broken. Maybe he came back knowing something we're not meant to know, and his mind couldn't reconcile it with everything else he thought was true. I'm writing this because I know I don't have much time left. Tonight, the whispers will be louder than they've ever been. Tonight, they'll call my name, and I'll recognize the voice. It'll sound like someone I love, someone I trust, and I'm afraid I'll answer. If you're reading this, if you ever find yourself at Whispering Pines RV Park, don't stay at Spot 47. Don't stay anywhere near it. Don't go at all if you can help it. But if you do, and if you hear whispers in a language you don't understand, remember what Diane said. Stay inside. Don't go looking. Don't try to see them. And whatever you do, don't let them hear you talk back. It's 2:04 a.m. now. I can feel them gathering outside my house. Amanda is asleep in the next room, or pretending to be. I know she hears them too. 2 more minutes. I've locked the door and hidden the keys, but I don't think it'll matter. When they call my name, I'll find a way out. I'll find a way back to them. Maybe Derek was right. Maybe they're just lonely. Maybe we all are. The clock just changed to 2:06. They're calling now, but it sounds like home. Story 3. My name is Tyler Brooks. What happened last October in the Great Smoky Mountains still doesn't make sense to me. I've tried to rationalize it, tried to find logical explanations, but the truth is I can't explain what we saw or what we found in that ranger station. More importantly, I can't explain what happened to Marcus. We were 5 friends making the drive from Charlotte to the Smokies for a long weekend. Me, Marcus, Jen, Dave, and Sarah. We'd done these trips before. Not to the Smokies specifically, but camping trips in general. We weren't hardcore outdoors people, just regular folks who liked getting away from the city for a few days. Marcus worked in IT with me. Jen was his girlfriend, a nurse at Presbyterian. Dave sold insurance and never shut up about it. Sarah was Dave's sister, a teacher who'd recently gone through a bad breakup and needed to get out of her apartment. The plan was simple. Rent an RV, drive to the Smoky Mountains, find a decent campsite, do some day hikes, drink some beer, and disconnect for 4 days. No cell service was actually a selling point. We wanted to be away from emails and notifications and the constant noise of modern life. We picked up the RV on Thursday morning, a 30-foot Class C that smelled like industrial cleaner and had a vague mildew scent underneath. Dave handled most of the driving since he was the only one comfortable with something that size. The drive took about 4 hours, and by early afternoon we were winding through the mountains, looking for the campground we'd reserved. That's when things started feeling off, though we didn't realize it at the time. The GPS kept losing signal, which wasn't surprising given the terrain. What was weird was that every time it reconnected, it showed us in slightly different locations than we expected. Dave laughed it off. "Technology," he said, like that explained everything. We relied on the paper map I'd printed before we left. We found the campground around 2 in the afternoon. It was called Cades Cove RV Park, tucked into a valley with mountains rising on 3 sides. There were maybe 20 other RVs scattered around, most of them bigger and nicer than ours. The camp host, a guy in his 60s with a gray beard and flannel shirt, checked us in and gave us a map of the grounds. He seemed friendly enough, but kept glancing at the sky like he was expecting weather. "Storm coming?" Marcus asked. "Always is this time of year," the host said. "Should be fine for a few days, though." We set up at Site 14, which was on the outer edge of the campground, backing onto thick forest. Dave connected the RV to power and water, while the rest of us unloaded supplies. By 4 o'clock, we had camp chairs arranged around a fire pit, coolers stocked with food and beer, and a decent blaze going despite the damp wood. That first night was normal. We cooked burgers on a portable grill, drank too much, told stupid stories about work and mutual friends. Sarah seemed to relax for the first time in weeks. Even Dave toned down the insurance talk. Around 11, we headed into the RV to sleep. Marcus and Jen in the bedroom at the back, Dave on the convertible couch, Sarah on the dinette bed, and me in the loft over the cab. I slept terribly. The RV made noises all night, creaking and settling sounds that I knew were normal but kept jolting me awake. Around 3 in the morning, I got up to piss and looked out the window above the dinette. The campground was dark except for a few RVs with their porch lights on. The forest beyond our site was absolute blackness. As I stood there, I thought I saw movement between the trees, but when I blinked it was gone. Probably a deer. Friday, we did a day hike to Laurel Falls, about 2.5 miles each way. The trail was paved and crowded with families and retirees. We took photos at the waterfall, ate sandwiches on the rocks, and headed back by early afternoon. That evening, we drove into Gatlinburg for dinner and to walk around the touristy strip. Everything felt normal. Good, even. Saturday morning, Marcus suggested we find a less crowded trail. He'd been looking at the map the camp host gave us and noticed something he called the Ridge Line Trail, that supposedly connected to the main trail system, but was marked as unmaintained. "I don't see it on the official park map," Jen said, comparing the camp host's map to the one she'd picked up at the visitor center. "That's because it's old," Marcus said. "Probably just hasn't been updated. Look, it's right here." He pointed to a thin line on the camp host's map that diverged from the main trail about 3 miles from the campground. Dave was skeptical, but Sarah wanted to try it. "I'm sick of walking behind slow people," she said. "Let's do something off the beaten path." We took 2 cars since the RV was a pain to drive unnecessarily. Marcus's Subaru, and Dave's pickup. The trailhead for the main path was about 20 minutes away, crowded with vehicles even at 9 in the morning. We started hiking with dozens of other people but kept to Marcus's plan, watching for the turnoff he'd marked on the map. We found it about an hour in, or at least Marcus insisted we did. There was no sign, just a narrow gap between trees where the undergrowth looked slightly trampled. A few flat rocks suggested it might be a path, but it could just as easily have been a game trail. "This is it," Marcus said, studying the map. "That's not a trail," Dave said. "That's just woods. It's here on the map. That map's probably from 1980. They argued for a minute while the rest of us stood around. Finally, Jen said, "Let's just check it out. If it's awful, we'll turn back." The path, if you could call it that, wound uphill through dense forest. Within 10 minutes, the main trail was out of sight and the sounds of other hikers faded completely. The forest felt darker here, the canopy thicker. We hiked in single file with Marcus leading and me taking up the rear. After about 30 minutes, we came to a clearing maybe 40 feet across. The trees formed an almost perfect circle around it, which Dave pointed out was weird. "Trees don't naturally grow like that," he said. In the center of the clearing was a structure. It was a ranger station, or had been. Single story, maybe 20 feet by 15 feet, built from logs that had weathered to gray. The roof was metal, rusted orange and brown. 2 windows flanked a wooden door, all of it looking like it hadn't been opened in years. There was no sign, no indicator of what it had been used for. "What the hell?" Sarah said. Marcus approached it slowly, still holding the map. "It's not on here." "Of course it's not on there," Dave said. "That thing's abandoned. Probably been here since the 70s. Jen walked around the perimeter, peering through the dirty windows. "Can't see anything. Too dark inside. Should we check it out?" Sarah asked. "Absolutely not," I said. Something about the building bothered me. It looked wrong sitting in that perfect clearing, too deliberately placed. And why would they build a ranger station this far off the main trail? "Come on, it's just an old building," Marcus said. He tried the door. The handle turned, but the door stuck. He put his shoulder into it and it scraped open, swollen wood scraping against the frame. The interior was dim, lit only by the dirty light coming through the windows and the open door. There was a metal desk pushed against one wall, a filing cabinet, a couple of chairs. Everything was covered in dust and what looked like animal droppings. The air smelled like rot and mildew. "This is creepy," Jen said from the doorway. She didn't go in. Marcus walked around the desk and opened a drawer. "Paperwork," he said, pulling out a folder. He flipped through it. "Incident reports from, looks like 1983. "About what?" Sarah asked. She'd stayed outside with me and Dave. "Looks like missing persons stuff. Couple of hikers didn't return from..." He squinted at the faded type. "From the Ridgeline Trail." "That's the trail we're on," Dave said. Marcus kept reading. "Says they sent search parties. Never found them. Filed as unsolved." "Put it back," I said. "This is a crime scene or something. We shouldn't be here. It's 40 years old," Marcus said. "Nobody cares." But he put the folder back. He poked around for another minute, opening drawers and looking at the maps pinned to the wall. They were old topographic maps, yellowed and curling at the edges. Someone had marked routes with red ink, trails that intersected and diverged in patterns that didn't match what I remembered from the official park map. "We should go," Jen said. "This place gives me the creeps." We left. Marcus pulled the door shut behind him, though it didn't quite close all the way. As we walked back across the clearing, I looked over my shoulder. Just for a second, I thought I saw movement in one of the windows, like someone stepping back from the glass. But when I blinked, it was just darkness. The hike back was quiet. Nobody talked much. We reached the main trail after 40 minutes and joined the stream of tourists heading back to the parking lot. Everything felt normal again, almost aggressively normal. Families with kids, retirees with walking sticks, teenagers taking selfies. The ranger station already felt like something we'd imagined. We got back to the campground around 4. The camp host was making rounds in a golf cart and stopped when he saw us. "You folks have a good hike?" he asked. "Great," Dave said. "Did the Ridgeline Trail. Found an old ranger station up there." The host's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. "Ridgeline Trail?" "Yeah, off the main path. There's an old building in a clearing." The host looked at each of us in turn. "No Ridgeline Trail in the park," he said slowly. "Must be thinking of something else." "No, it was on the map you gave us," Marcus said. He pulled out the folded paper. "Right here." The host looked at the map for a long time. "That's not our map," he finally said. "You gave it to us when we checked in." "That's not our map," he repeated. "We don't give out maps like that. We give out the official park map, same as the visitor center, but must have picked it up somewhere else." The host put the golf cart in gear. "You folks have a good evening." He drove off before any of us could respond. "That was weird," Sarah said. "He's covering something up," Marcus said. "Did you see his face when I mentioned the ranger station? Or maybe we grabbed the wrong map and he's embarrassed," Dave said. "These guys take their job seriously." We dropped it, made dinner, sat around the fire, drank beer. But the conversation kept circling back to the ranger station. What was it for? Why wasn't it on any current maps? What happened to the hikers mentioned in those incident reports? Around midnight, Marcus said he wanted to go back. "Absolutely not," Jen said immediately. "Are you insane? I'm just saying it's weird. The whole thing is weird. That guy's reaction was weird. I want to get another look at those files." "At midnight? We could go tomorrow morning," Sarah suggested. "Early, before other hikers are out." "Why do you want to go back?" I asked. "It's just an old building." "Because something's off about it," Marcus said. "You all feel it too. Don't lie. That place shouldn't be there." The camp host acted like we'd stumbled onto something we weren't supposed to see. "I want to know what that is." We argued about it for another hour. Eventually, everyone went to bed without making a decision. I lay in the loft, staring at the ceiling. The RV made its settling noises. Outside, I could hear wind moving through the trees. Around 2 a.m, I heard the door open. I looked over the edge of the loft and saw Marcus silhouetted against the doorway, a flashlight in his hand. "Where are you going?" I whispered. He looked up at me. Even in the darkness, I could see his expression, determined, almost excited. "The ranger station. I need to see it again. It's the middle of the night. I can't sleep. I keep thinking about those files." He paused. "Come with me." "Are you insane?" "Probably. But I'm going. Come with me, or don't." He stepped out and closed the door quietly behind him. I lay there for maybe 30 seconds, then swore under my breath and climbed down as quietly as I could. I pulled on my shoes and jacket and grabbed my flashlight. Outside, Marcus was already walking toward the tree line at the back of our site. I jogged to catch up. "This is stupid," I said. "Probably." We walked into the forest. The night was overcast, no moon or stars, just complete darkness beyond our flashlight beams. The sounds of the campground faded almost immediately, replaced by wind and rustling branches and our own footsteps crunching through dead leaves. I'd assumed we'd get lost immediately, but Marcus seemed to know where he was going. He led us uphill, navigating by landmarks I couldn't identify in the darkness. Every sound made me jump. A snapping branch, a rustling in the undergrowth, what might have been an animal call in the distance. After what felt like an hour but was probably only 30 minutes, we entered the clearing. The ranger station sat in the center, exactly as we'd left it. But something was different. The door was fully open. "Did you close it when we left?" I asked. "Yeah, pulled it shut." "So, someone else is here." We stood at the edge of the clearing, flashlights pointed at the building. Nothing moved. No light came from inside. "Hello?" Marcus called out. His voice sounded small in the darkness. No response. We approached slowly. I was gripping my flashlight so hard my hand hurt. Marcus reached the doorway first and shined his light inside. "Jesus Christ," he said. I came up beside him and looked. The interior had changed. The desk was still there, still covered in dust. But now there were papers everywhere, scattered across the floor, pinned to the walls, covering every surface. Hundreds of pages, all covered in writing, and the walls themselves were covered in writing, scratched directly into the wood. Names, dates, coordinates. Some of it looked old, the scratches weathered and dark. Some looked recent, the wood freshly scored. "We should leave," I said. "Right now." Marcus stepped inside. "Look at this." The papers on the floor were more incident reports, all following the same format. Missing hikers, dates ranging from 1983 to what looked like last month. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Each one ended the same way. Search conducted, no remains found, case closed. The names on the walls were organized by year. 1983 had maybe 10 names. 1984 had 12. The numbers increased as the years went on. 2023 had 47 names. October 1924, last month, had 3 names already. At the bottom, freshly scratched, were 5 blank lines. "Tyler," Marcus said quietly. "Look at the desk." The folders he'd looked through earlier were arranged in a neat row. On top of them was the map the camp host had given us. Next to it was a piece of paper with fresh ink, a handwritten note in neat script. "Welcome back. We've been waiting." I grabbed Marcus's arm. "We're leaving. Now." "Who wrote that?" "I don't care. We're leaving." I pulled him toward the door. As we stepped out into the clearing, I heard something. A rustling from the tree line on the far side. We both spun, flashlights cutting through the darkness. There was someone standing at the edge of the trees. They were just outside the reach of our lights, a dark silhouette against darker forest. They weren't moving, just standing there watching us. "Hello," Marcus called out. "Who's there?" The figure didn't respond, didn't move. "We're leaving," I said loudly. We didn't mean to trespass. Still nothing, but as we started backing away, the figure moved. Not toward us, parallel to us, circling the clearing, staying in the shadows just beyond our flashlight beams. "Walk," I said to Marcus. "Don't run, just walk." We backed away from the station, keeping our lights on the circling figure. It matched our pace exactly, maintaining its distance. As we reached the tree line where we'd entered, it stopped. We plunged into the forest. I expected to hear footsteps behind us, branches breaking, breathing, but there was nothing except our own panicked movement. We ran downhill, tripping over roots and rocks, flashlights bouncing wildly. I don't know how long we ran. Eventually, we stumbled out of the tree line behind our campsite. The RV sat exactly where we'd left it. Porch light on, everything normal. We sat in the camp chairs, breathing hard. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. "What the fuck was that?" Marcus finally said. "I don't know. Someone's living up there, using that station for something. We should tell the camp host, or call the police." "And say what?" "We trespassed on an abandoned building and saw someone standing in the woods." He had a point. We sat in silence for a while longer, then went inside. Jen woke up when Marcus got into bed and asked where he'd been. He told her he'd gone to the bathroom. She went back to sleep. I climbed into the loft, but didn't sleep. I lay there watching the window, expecting to see someone standing outside, but there was nothing. Just darkness and the occasional movement of tree branches in the wind. Sunday morning, we slept late. Nobody mentioned the ranger station, though Marcus and I exchanged looks across the breakfast table. Around 11, Dave suggested we drive into town for lunch instead of cooking. Everyone agreed. We were loading into the vehicles when the camp host's golf cart pulled up. He looked at us for a long moment before speaking. "You folks had any problems?" he asked. "Problems?" Dave said. "Strange noises. Anyone bothering you?" "No, everything's been great," Dave said. "Why?" The host looked at Marcus and me specifically. "Sometimes people see things in these woods, especially at night. Sometimes they go looking for things they shouldn't." "We don't know what you're talking about," Marcus said. "Good." The host put the cart in gear. "Keep it that way." He drove off. "Okay, what the hell was that about?" Sarah asked. "No idea," Marcus said, but he wouldn't meet her eyes. We drove into Gatlinburg and spent the afternoon walking around, eating at a barbecue place, generally trying to act normal. But something had shifted in the group. Dave and Sarah seemed fine, oblivious, but Jen kept looking at Marcus like she knew something was wrong, and Marcus seemed distracted, distant. That night we had a fire and finished off most of our beer. Around 11, Dave and Sarah went to bed. Jen followed shortly after. Marcus and I sat outside. "We should tell them," I said. "Tell them what?" "What we saw. What happened?" Marcus stared into the fire. "They'd think we're crazy. Hell, I think we're crazy." "Someone's up there, Marcus. Someone wrote that note. Someone was watching us." "I know." "So we tell the others. We pack up and leave tomorrow instead of Tuesday." Marcus didn't respond for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. "I need to go back." "What?" "No, absolutely not. There are answers up there. About what happened to those people. About what that place is. I don't care about answers. I care about getting out of here safely. You saw the names on the wall, Tyler. Dozens of people, all missing. All from the same trail. Something's happening up there and nobody's doing anything about it. That's not our problem. Maybe it should be." We argued for another hour, going in circles. Eventually, I gave up and went inside. Marcus stayed by the fire. I watched him from the window for a while before climbing into the loft. He just sat there, staring into the flames. I woke to silence. No RV noises, no wind, nothing. According to my phone, it was 3:06 a.m. I looked out the loft window. The fire had burned down to embers. Marcus's chair was empty. I climbed down and checked the RV. Everyone was there except Marcus. His shoes were gone. His jacket was gone. Jen was asleep in their bed. "Fuck," I whispered. I pulled on my clothes and grabbed my flashlight. Stepped outside. The campground was dead silent, every RV dark. I walked to the tree line, shining my light into the forest. "Marcus," I called in a loud whisper. No response. I stood there for 5 minutes, trying to decide what to do. Call the police? Wake the others? Go after him alone? I went back inside and woke Dave. "Marcus is gone," I said. "He went back to the ranger station." Dave blinked at me, confused and half asleep. "What ranger station?" "The one we found yesterday. I'll explain on the way. We need to go get him." It took another 5 minutes to get Dave dressed and outside. We woke Sarah and Jen, told them to stay at the RV, and said we'd be back in an hour. Jen wanted to come, but I convinced her to stay. Told her Marcus had probably just gone for a walk and would feel stupid if she made a big deal about it. Dave and I hiked into the forest. I tried to retrace the route Marcus had taken the previous night, but in my panic, everything looked different. We walked for 30 minutes, calling Marcus's name, sweeping our flashlights through the trees. We found the clearing by accident, almost walking past it before Dave's light caught the corner of the ranger station. The building sat in its perfect circle of trees, door standing open. Our flashlights illuminated the interior, the desk, the scattered papers, the names scratched into the walls. Marcus was standing in the center of the room, his back to us. "Marcus," I said. "Jesus Christ, man, you scared the shit out of us." He didn't turn around, didn't move at all. Dave and I approached the doorway. "Marcus," Dave said, "you okay?" "He's fine," a voice said from inside the building. A figure stepped out from behind Marcus. It was the camp host. He stood there smiling at us, one hand resting on Marcus's shoulder. In the beam of our flashlights, his face looked wrong. The shadows fell in strange directions. His eyes reflected the light like an animal's. "He found what he was looking for," the host said. "We all do, eventually." "Get away from him," I said. My voice shook. "He came willingly. They always do. You were curious too, weren't you, Tyler? That's why you came back the first time. That's why you're here now." Marcus still hadn't moved. He stood perfectly still, arms at his sides, facing away from us. "Marcus, we're leaving," Dave said. "Right now." "He'll leave when he's ready," the host said. "When they're all ready." More figures emerged from the shadows inside the station. 5, maybe 6 people, all standing perfectly still, all facing us with the same empty expressions. Dave grabbed my arm. "Run!" We ran, crashed back through the forest, branches whipping our faces, roots trying to trip us. I heard footsteps, many footsteps, moving through the undergrowth. Not running, just walking steadily, unhurried. We burst out of the trees behind the campground and ran straight to the RV. Jen and Sarah were standing outside, worried. "Where's Marcus?" Jen demanded. "Get in the RV," I said. "Now. We need to leave." "What happened? Where is he?" "Get in the RV." Dave was already disconnecting the power and water. I ran to the cab and started the engine. Sarah pulled Jen inside and I put the RV in gear the moment Dave jumped in. We drove out of the campground too fast, the RV bouncing over speed bumps. At the entrance gate, the camp host's golf cart sat empty. The gate itself was open. "Tyler, where is Marcus?" Jen was crying now. "What happened?" "He was at the ranger station," I said. The camp host was there, and other people. I stopped, realizing how insane it sounded. "They what?" "I don't know. Something's wrong with them, with that place." We drove through the night, following the winding mountain roads too fast, taking curves that made the RV lean and groan. None of us spoke. Sarah held Jen while she cried. Dave stared out the window. We didn't stop until we reached Gatlinburg, pulling into the parking lot of an all-night diner. Inside, under fluorescent lights with other normal people around us, we tried to figure out what to do. "We need to call the police," Sarah said. We did. An officer came to the diner and took our statements. He was professional, but I could see the skepticism in his eyes. We told him about the ranger station, the camp host, Marcus going missing. We left out the parts that sounded crazy. The names on the walls, the figures in the shadows, the way Marcus had stood there without moving. The officer said they'd send a search party at first light. He took our information and told us to get some sleep. We rented 2 motel rooms and waited. None of us slept. At 6 a.m., we drove back to the campground with the police following us. In daylight, the place looked completely normal. Regular families making breakfast outside their RVs, kids riding bikes, someone walking a dog. The camp host was in his office, the same friendly old man who'd checked us in. He had no record of talking to us about the Ridgeline Trail. He gave us a copy of the official park map, just the standard one from the visitor center. We showed the police where we'd entered the forest. They searched for 3 hours and found nothing. No clearing, no ranger station, no evidence anyone had been in those woods recently. They suggested Marcus might have gotten disoriented and wandered off. They'd continue searching. We drove home that afternoon. The whole trip back, Jen sat in silence, staring out the window. Sarah tried to comfort her, but there was nothing to say. The search continued for a week. They never found Marcus. No trace of him. Eventually, it was classified as a missing person case, still open, but no active investigation. The theory is he went for a hike and got lost, maybe fell, maybe succumbed to exposure. It happens in the mountains. I've tried to move on. We all have. But I think about it every day. I dream about that ranger station, about Marcus standing there in the darkness while the camp host smiled at us, about the names scratched into the walls, 40 years of missing people. I've looked for information about the Ridgeline Trail online. Nothing. No historical records. No references in old park documents. The map we used has disappeared. I've looked everywhere for it, like it never existed. Last week I got a letter. No return address, postmarked from Tennessee. Inside was a single piece of paper with 5 names written in neat handwriting. Tyler Brooks, Dave Morrison, Sarah Morrison, Jennifer Hayes, Marcus Chen. 4 of the names had lines still drawn through them. Underneath was a single sentence. We'll see you soon. I haven't told the others about the letter. What would I say? I've thought about going to the police, but what could they do? I've thought about going back to the Smokies, trying to find that clearing again, but I'm terrified of what I might find. Sometimes, late at night, I hear footsteps outside my apartment. When I look through the peephole, there's no one there. But I know someone's watching, waiting. They said we'd be ready eventually. I think my time is running out. Story 4. My name is Emily Carter. What happened to me and my boyfriend last October in the San Juan Mountains shouldn't be possible. But I'm going to tell you exactly what I remember. We'd been planning the trip for months. Mark had just gotten promoted at his engineering firm, and I'd finally finished my thesis on cognitive behavioral patterns in isolated populations. Ironic, I know. We needed to get away from Denver, away from the noise and the constant buzzing of our phones. Mark found this dispersed camping area about 15 miles outside of Silverton, Colorado. No designated spots, no amenities, just you and the wilderness. Perfect, we thought. We left on a Thursday morning in early October. Mark drove his Tacoma while I navigated, though there wasn't much navigating to do once we left the highway. The dirt road wound through aspens that were just starting to turn, their leaves flickering gold and green in the afternoon light. We passed one other vehicle on the way in, a Forest Service truck heading out. The ranger inside gave us a wave. That was the last person we saw for 3 days. The camping area wasn't marked on the physical map I'd brought, which should have been our first warning, but Mark's GPS showed it clearly. A small clearing about 50 yards off the main forest road, nestled between 2 ridge lines. We set up camp around 3 in the afternoon. Mark hammered in the tent stakes while I unpacked the cooler and organized our gear. Everything normal. Everything mundane. That first night was perfect. We cooked brats over the fire, drank beer, and Mark played his guitar badly while I laughed at him. The stars were incredible. No light pollution for miles. We saw a few shooting stars and made wishes we didn't share with each other. I remember thinking how lucky we were, how simple life could be if we just stepped away from it all. We went to bed around midnight. The temperature had dropped, but our sleeping bags were rated for cold weather. I fell asleep listening to Mark's breathing and the occasional pop from the dying fire outside. I woke up to the sound of our GPS recalculating. It was still dark. I checked my phone. 2:47 a.m. The GPS in Mark's truck shouldn't have been on. We'd turned it off before bed to save battery, but I could hear it clearly through the tent fabric. Recalculating route. Recalculating route. Mark was still asleep. I unzipped the tent and stepped outside in my long underwear and boots. The fire was completely out, not even embers. The GPS screen glowed blue through the truck's windshield. When I opened the door, the voice stopped. The screen showed our location as a blue dot on a map, but the map was wrong. According to the GPS, we were 7 miles south of where we'd camped. I checked my phone's map app. It showed the same thing. We were 7 miles south, but we hadn't moved. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes, trying to make sense of it. Then I convinced myself it was a glitch. Satellites got confused in mountain valleys sometimes. I turned off the GPS, closed the truck door, and went back to bed. When I woke up the next morning, Mark was already making coffee on the camp stove. The sun was bright, the air was crisp, and everything seemed normal. I didn't mention the GPS. It felt stupid in the daylight. We decided to hike up to an old mining site Mark had read about online. According to his research, there was a collapsed shaft about 3 miles north of our camp, up a steep trail that switchbacked through the pine forest. We packed light: water, snacks, first aid kit, bear spray. We left camp around 9. The trail was unmarked but obvious. Game trails and old mining roads crisscrossed the mountainside, but we followed the main path upward. Mark was in good spirits. He talked about maybe buying some land out here someday, building a small cabin. I remember thinking that sounded nice. We hiked for about 2 hours. The trees thinned as we climbed, and we got glimpses of the valley below. But something started to feel off. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. Then Mark stopped. "That's weird," he said. He was looking at a tree. Someone had carved something into the bark. 2 letters. EC. My initials. "Did you do that?" Mark asked. I'd never been here before. But there they were, carved deep into the aspen bark. Fresh, too, from the look of it. The wood inside was still white. "Maybe someone with the same initials?" I suggested. Mark shrugged, but I could tell it bothered him. We kept hiking. 30 minutes later, we found the mining site. Or at least, we found a mining site. But it wasn't what Mark had described. He'd said it was a collapsed shaft with some old equipment scattered around. What we found was a deep vertical pit, maybe 8 feet in diameter with a wooden frame around it. Someone had stretched a chain-link fence across the top, secured with padlocks, and hanging from the fence was a sign: "Danger, vertical shaft, approx, depth 400 FT. Mark pulled out his phone to check his notes, but his phone was dead. Completely dead, even though he'd charged it overnight and barely used it all morning. "That's impossible," he said. He'd had 90% battery when we left camp. Mine was fine. 78%. I took a picture of the shaft, though I don't know why. We stood there for a while, looking down into the darkness. You couldn't see the bottom, just black. That's when I noticed something else. My hiking boot had mud on it. Thick, dark mud. But the ground around the shaft was dry. We hadn't crossed any streams or puddles on the way up. "We should head back," I said. Mark agreed. The hike down should have taken about an hour and a half. We'd been careful to stay on the main trail. But after 45 minutes, we came to the clearing where we'd camped. Except we'd been hiking north away from camp. We'd been climbing. And now we were back. Mark stood at the edge of the clearing, staring at our tent, our truck, our cold fire pit. "We went in a circle somehow," he said. But we hadn't. I'd been watching the sun. We'd been moving steadily downhill, south, the entire time. "Maybe there are multiple trails," I said. "Maybe we just got turned around." Mark pulled out his compass. He kept one clipped to his pack because he didn't trust technology in the backcountry. He held it flat in his palm and watched the needle spin, and spin, and spin. It never settled, just kept rotating slowly like it couldn't find north. "Okay," Mark said. "Okay, let's think about this." But I could hear the edge in his voice, the same edge I was feeling in my chest. We decided to try again. We'd be more careful this time. We'd mark the trail. Mark took out his knife and cut a blaze into a tree at the edge of the clearing, a clear X carved deep into the bark. Then we started hiking south toward where the main forest road should have been. We walked for 2 hours, marked trees every 100 yards or so, kept the sun on our right, kept moving in a straight line, and then we saw the X, the first one, the one Mark had carved at the edge of our clearing. We'd come back in a perfect loop. Mark sat down on a rock. He didn't say anything for a long time. I checked my phone. The map showed us in the same place we'd been that morning. The GPS hadn't moved, but we'd been walking for hours. "This doesn't make sense," Mark finally said. I agreed, but I didn't know what else to say. We returned to camp. It was getting late. The sun was starting to dip behind the western ridge. Mark tried to start a fire, but the matches wouldn't light. He tried over and over, striking them against the box, but they just fizzled. Finally, he grabbed the lighter from the truck. That worked. We ate dinner in silence. Freeze-dried meals rehydrated with boiled water. They tasted like cardboard. After we finished, Mark said, "We'll drive out tomorrow morning." First thing. I nodded. That sounded good. That sounded sane. But I kept thinking about my initials carved in that tree, and the mud on my boot, and the spinning compass needle. That night, I couldn't sleep. Mark was out cold. He always slept like the dead when we camped. But I lay there in my sleeping bag, listening to the silence. And that's when I realized how quiet it was. No wind, no animals, no insects, nothing. Just the sound of Mark breathing and my own heartbeat. I got up around 1 a.m. and stepped outside. The fire was still burning, which was strange because we'd let it die down before bed. But there it was, crackling away like we'd just fed it wood. I sat on a log and stared at the flames. That's when I saw the footprints. They circled our tent. Small prints, maybe a size 7 or 8. Barefoot. They went around and around. Always the same distance from the tent, like someone had been pacing. I followed them with my flashlight. They formed a perfect circle, and then they just stopped. No trail leading away. They just ended mid-stride, like whoever made them had vanished. I should have woken Mark. I should have packed up right then and driven out in the dark. But I didn't. I just sat there, staring at those footprints, until the sky started to lighten. Mark woke up around 6. He looked like he'd slept well. I told him about the footprints, and we looked together in the morning light, but they were gone. The ground around our tent was smooth and undisturbed. "You probably dreamed it," Mark said. "You were stressed yesterday." Maybe, but I hadn't been asleep. We broke camp quickly. Mark was eager to get out, and so was I. We packed everything into the truck, kicked dirt over the fire pit, and got in. Mark turned the key. Nothing. He tried again. The engine clicked but wouldn't turn over. The dashboard lights flickered. "Battery's dead," he said, but that was impossible. The truck was less than a year old, and we'd driven it yesterday with no problems. Mark popped the hood. I got out and looked with him. The battery terminals were corroded, not just a little. They were covered in thick white and green buildup, like the battery had been sitting for years. "What the hell?" Mark whispered. We tried jumping it with the portable jumper Mark kept in his emergency kit. Nothing. The truck was dead. "Okay," Mark said. He was doing that thing where he talks himself through a problem. "Okay." We hike out to the main road. Flag down someone. We're 15 miles from the highway, but someone will come through. We get help. We come back with a tow truck or a new battery. It's fine, it's fine. But his hands were shaking. We loaded day packs with water, food, and essentials. Left everything else in the truck. Then we started walking. The forest road was obvious, clear, wide enough for vehicles. We walked south toward where we'd driven in 2 days ago. The sun was bright. The air was warming up. Everything looked normal. We walked for 3 hours, and then we saw our truck. It was parked in the exact same clearing we'd just left. Our tent was set up beside it. The fire pit had fresh ashes. Mark dropped his pack. He walked over to the truck and put his hand on the hood. Then he turned to me, and his face was white. "We walked in a straight line," he said. We had. I'd been watching. We hadn't deviated. We hadn't crossed any intersections or turnoffs. We'd walked on the same road the entire time. "Maybe we went north instead of south," I suggested. Mark pulled out his compass. The needle was still spinning. I checked my phone. The GPS showed us in the exact same spot we'd been that morning. Like we'd never moved. "Emily," Mark said quietly. "What's happening to us?" I didn't have an answer. We tried again. This time, we marked the road. Used spray paint from Mark's emergency kit to paint an arrow pointing south, away from camp. Then we walked. Watched the sun. Kept our eyes on the road. 2 hours later, we came back to the arrow, but we'd been walking away from it the entire time. Mark started laughing. Not a funny laugh. A desperate, confused laugh. He sat down in the middle of the road and put his head in his hands. "We're stuck," he said. "We're stuck in a fucking loop." I sat down beside him. My phone said it was 2:47 p.m. The exact same time I'd woken up that first night when the GPS was recalculating. "Look at your phone," I said. Mark pulled it out. It was on, which was weird because it had died yesterday. The screen showed 2:47 p.m., and as we watched, it flickered back to 2:47 p.m. The seconds counted up to 60, and then the whole display reset. 2:47 p.m. My phone was doing the same thing. Stuck in a loop, just like us. Mark stood up. He was breathing hard. "This isn't real. This is some kind of, I don't know, gas leak? Carbon monoxide? We're hallucinating." But we weren't in the truck. We weren't in the tent. We were outside, in open air. "We need to stay calm," I said, even though I was anything but calm. "Let's go back to camp and think this through." But going back to camp was the problem, I realized. No matter what we did, we went back to camp. We sat there in the road until the sun started setting. Then we walked back, because where else could we go? That night, we didn't light a fire. We sat in the truck with the doors locked, even though the battery was dead and the truck was useless. Mark tried his phone again. It had signal, 3 bars, but when he called 911, it just rang. No answer. He tried his parents, my parents, his work. Every call just rang forever. I tried texting my sister. The message said delivered, but she never responded. I sent 5 more, all delivered. None answered. Around midnight, Mark fell asleep. I stayed awake, and that's when I heard it. Footsteps, circling the truck. The same barefoot steps from the night before. Around and around and around. I didn't look. I kept my eyes straight ahead. If I looked, I thought I might see something I couldn't unsee. The footsteps stopped at the driver's side window, right next to Mark's head. I didn't turn. I didn't breathe. And then something tapped on the glass. 3 times. Tap, tap, tap. I finally turned my head. There was nothing there. But on the window, in the condensation, someone had drawn a smiley face. I didn't sleep that night. In the morning, Mark was different. He didn't want to talk. He just stared at the trees. When I asked him what was wrong, he said, "I had a dream." We got out. We drove home. But when we got there, Our apartment was different. Everything was just a little bit wrong. The couch was the wrong color. You had short hair. Your sister's name was different. That's just stress, I said. Maybe, Mark said. But he didn't sound convinced. We tried hiking out again that day. This time, we didn't mark the trail. We didn't use the compass or the GPS straight. We just walked through the trees, over rocks, through bushes. We didn't stop. We walked for 6 hours, and then we came to a cliff. We were on top of a ridge. Below us was our clearing, our truck, our tent. We could see everything from above, and I could see something else. The forest road we'd been walking on didn't go anywhere. It formed a perfect circle around the clearing, a loop, like someone had designed it that way. Look, Mark said. He pointed down. There were people in our clearing, 4 of them. They were standing around our truck looking at it, but they were too far away to see clearly. "Hey!" Mark shouted. "Hey!" They didn't look up. They just kept standing there. "We need to get down there," Mark said. But I didn't want to. Something about those people felt wrong, the way they stood. Too still. Mark started climbing down the rocky slope anyway. I followed because I didn't want to be alone. It took us an hour to reach the bottom. By the time we got to the clearing, the people were gone. But they'd left something behind. On the hood of the truck, someone had written in the dust, "Help us." Mark ran his finger through it. Fresh. Recent. "Who are they?" he whispered. We searched the clearing, checked the tent, looked through our supplies. Everything was exactly as we'd left it, except for the message. That night, we heard voices. They came from the forest, just beyond the edge of the firelight. Whispering. I couldn't make out words, but I could hear the rhythm of conversation. Back and forth, back and forth. "Hello?" Mark called out. The voices stopped, then started again. Louder. Multiple conversations overlapping. Men and women, maybe children, all whispering just beyond where we could see. Mark grabbed a flashlight and walked toward the tree line. I grabbed his arm. "Don't," I said. "They might need help," he said. "Or they might be what's keeping us here." He stopped. We listened. The voices kept whispering. And then I realized they were saying the same things over and over. The same patterns. Like a recording on a loop. We stayed up all night. The voices didn't stop until the sun came up. The next morning, or the morning after that, I'd lost count, Mark said he wanted to go to the mining shaft, the vertical pit we'd found on our first hike. I asked him why, and he said, "I think that's where it starts. I think that's the center." The center of what? I didn't ask. I was starting to understand that questions didn't matter anymore. Nothing we did changed anything. We hiked up, found the shaft. It was exactly where it had been before. Mark walked up to the chain-link fence and looked down. "I've been thinking," he said. "What if this is real? What if we're not hallucinating? What if this is just what happened?" We drove into something, some kind of pocket, some kind of trap. "That doesn't make sense," I said. "Neither does walking in circles for 3 days." He was right. I sat down on a rock. "So, what do we do?" Mark stared into the shaft. "Maybe we need to go down." "That's insane." "Is it? We've tried everything else. What if the way out is through?" I looked at him. Really looked at him. He'd lost weight. His eyes were sunken. He hadn't shaved in days. He looked like someone else. Like he was becoming someone else. "No," I said. "We're not going down there." Mark nodded slowly. Then he stood up and walked back toward camp. I followed. But that night, while I was sleeping, he left. I woke up around 2:47 a.m., because of course I did. And he was gone. His sleeping bag was empty. I got up and found him at the edge of the clearing, standing perfectly still, facing the forest. "Mark?" He didn't respond. I walked over and touched his shoulder. He turned around, and that's when I saw his eyes. They were different. The color was wrong, or maybe the color was right and I'd been remembering them wrong. I couldn't tell anymore. "Did you hear it?" he asked. "Hear what?" "The calling. They're calling us. They've been calling us the whole time." "Who?" "The others. The ones who are stuck here. They want us to join them. They want us to stop trying to leave." I stepped back. "You're scaring me." Mark smiled. It wasn't his smile. "There's nothing to be scared of anymore, Emily. We're already where we're supposed to be. We've always been here. Don't you remember?" "Remember what?" "We never left Denver. This is all we've ever known. The loop, the clearing, the voices. It's all there's ever been." I ran. I didn't know where I was running, but I ran into the forest. I could hear Mark behind me, calling my name. Or was it my name? It sounded different, like he was calling someone else. I ran until I couldn't breathe. Then I stopped and realized I was back in the clearing. Of course I was. Mark was sitting by the truck, crying. "I'm sorry," he said. "I don't know what that was. I thought I could hear them, but I can't anymore. Emily, I think I'm losing my mind." I held him. We sat there together until morning. On what I think was the 6th day, or maybe the 6th time we'd lived the same day, something changed. We woke up, and there was someone else in the clearing. A woman. She was standing by the fire pit, warming her hands over flames that weren't there. She looked about 40, wearing hiking clothes, carrying a blue backpack. She didn't acknowledge us. "Excuse me," Mark said. The woman didn't respond. She just stood there, warming her hands over nothing. Mark walked up to her, waved his hand in front of her face. Nothing. She wasn't really there, or we weren't really there. I couldn't tell anymore. Then she walked away, just turned and walked into the forest. Mark and I looked at each other, and without saying anything we followed her. She led us on a winding path through the trees. We climbed over rocks and ducked under branches. She never looked back, never slowed down. After about 30 minutes, she stopped. We were at the mining shaft again. Of course we were. The woman walked right up to the fence and climbed over it. Didn't hesitate. Just swung her legs over and dropped down into the pit. Mark ran forward, but she was gone. No scream, no sound, just gone. "Jesus Christ," Mark whispered. We looked down into the shaft. Darkness. But now I could hear something. A low hum, constant, coming from deep below. "We need to leave," I said. "Now. Whatever this place is, we need to leave. We've been trying to leave." "No. I mean really leave. Stop trying to find the road. Stop trying to hike out. Just pick a direction and walk. Don't stop. Don't come back." Mark looked at me. Okay, let's try." We went back to camp, packed everything we could carry, left the tent and the truck. We picked east, just because we hadn't really tried east yet, and started walking. We walked for 12 hours, through forests, over ridges, through meadows. We didn't stop. We barely spoke. We just walked. And then the sun set. And in the darkness, we saw lights ahead. Flashlights. A campfire. We stumbled forward, shouting, waving our arms. We reached the clearing. Our truck, our tent, which we'd left behind, standing exactly where it had been. Mark fell to his knees. He didn't get up. I walked over to the truck and opened the door. The GPS screen flickered on. It showed our location. But now it showed something else too. A timestamp. It said, October 15th, 2:47 a.m. That was the first night we'd camped here. The night I'd heard the GPS recalculating. We'd been in the loop for less than an hour. Everything after that. The hiking, the cliff, the voices, the woman at the shaft. It had all happened in less than an hour of real time. Or maybe it had been days. Maybe it had been years. Time didn't work here. I looked at Mark. He was still on his knees. He'd stopped crying. He was just staring at the ground. "I'm staying," he said quietly. "What?" "I'm staying. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep trying to leave just to come back. I'm staying." "Mark, you should go though. You should try. Maybe it only works for one person. Maybe if I stay, you can leave." I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him that was insane. But part of me wondered if he was right. What if one of us had to stay? What if that was the price? I looked at the forest road, the one that went in a circle, the one that always brought us back. "I'll try," I said. Mark nodded. He didn't look at me. I started walking, south, toward where the highway should have been. I didn't mark the path. I didn't check my GPS. I just walked, one foot in front of the other. I walked until dawn. The sun rose behind me. That was wrong. It should have risen in front of me if I was walking south, but I kept going. At some point, I realized I was humming. A song I didn't recognize. The same tune over and over. I stopped humming, but a few minutes later I was doing it again. After a while, I came to a clearing. There was a truck parked there, a tent, a cold fire pit. My truck, my tent, my fire pit. But Mark wasn't there. I walked around the clearing. His pack was gone. It was like he'd never been here at all. I checked my phone. It worked now. Full signal. The date said October 15th. The time said 6:23 a.m. I had 17 missed calls, 12 from my sister, 5 from my mom. I had texts asking where I was, why I wasn't answering, if I was okay. The most recent text was from Mark, sent 2 days ago. "Hey, something came up at work. Can't make the camping trip. Sorry. Rain check." But that was impossible. Mark had been here. We'd been stuck here together. I had memories. Days of memories, didn't I? I looked at the fire pit. There were fresh ashes, like someone had burned something recently. I poked through them with a stick and found something that didn't burn. Metal. I pulled it out. It was Mark's compass, the one that had stopped working. But now the needle was pointing steady, directly at me. I dropped it. My hands were shaking. I pulled out my phone and called Mark. It rang 3 times, and then he answered. "Hey, Em. What's up?" "Mark? Yeah? Where are you? At home? Are you okay? You sound weird." "I'm at the camping site, in the San Juans." "By yourself? I thought you canceled after I had to bail." No, we came together. We've been here for days. We've been stuck. Emily, seriously, are you okay? Do you need me to come get you?" I couldn't speak. I looked around the clearing. My tire tracks in the dirt. One set. My footprints around the fire. Just mine. "I have to go," I said, and hung up. I sat down on a rock and tried to think. Tried to remember. What was real? Had Mark been here? Had any of it happened? I looked at my photos. There was one picture on my phone from this trip. The one I'd taken of the mining shaft on the first day. I opened it. In the photo, standing at the edge of the shaft, barely visible in the background, was a figure. A person. I zoomed in. It was me. But I was smiling. And I was wearing different clothes. Clothes I'd never owned. I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around. Mark was standing at the edge of the clearing. But it wasn't the Mark I knew. He was thinner, older. His hair was gray at the temples. He looked like he'd aged 20 years. "You found your way out," he said. He sounded sad. "What? You're on the other side now. You made it. But you'll come back. They always come back." "Mark, what are you talking about?" He smiled. "I'm not Mark. Not really. I'm what's left of him. What stays behind when someone escapes the loop. I've been here a long time, Emily. Longer than you can imagine. This isn't real. Neither is the world you're going back to. Not really. They're both real. Or neither is. Does it matter?" I stood up. "I'm leaving. You are. But you'll remember, and you'll wonder. And eventually you'll come back to check, to see if it was real. And when you do, the loop will be waiting. I backed away toward my truck. The keys were in my pocket. I got in and turned the ignition. The engine started immediately. Everything worked. I drove out. The forest road was clear, straight. After 15 miles, I hit the highway. I drove back to Denver without stopping. That was 3 weeks ago. I've tried to go back to normal. I went back to work. I saw my family. I called Mark, the real Mark, the one who'd never come camping with me. And he seemed fine, totally normal. He didn't remember anything about the loop because he'd never been there, but I remember. And here's the thing I can't explain. My GPS still glitches sometimes. It shows me in 2 places at once. And sometimes, late at night, I hear something outside my apartment. Footsteps, circling, around and around. And 3 days ago, I found something in my car. In the center console. It was a compass. Not Mark's, a different one. And when I opened it, the needle was spinning. I checked my photos again. That picture of the mining shaft. I've looked at it 100 times. And each time I look, there's someone different in the background. Sometimes it's me. Sometimes it's a woman I don't recognize. Sometimes it's a group of people, all standing at the edge, all smiling. Today, I looked, and they were all staring directly at the camera. I called in sick to work. I packed a bag. I'm writing this now because I need someone to know what happened, where I'm going, why I'm going. I looked up the camping area on my GPS. It's showing 2 locations now, one in the San Juan Mountains where I camped, and one in a different place entirely, somewhere I've never been. But according to my GPS, I'm there right now. My phone says it's 2:47 a.m. I'm going back. I have to. Because I need to know if it was real. I need to know if Mark is still there, waiting. I need to know what happens if you go back to a loop you've already escaped. Or maybe I never escaped at all. Maybe this is the loop, this life I'm living, this apartment, this job. Maybe the real world was the clearing, the voices, the endless walking. Maybe I'm still there, and everything since has been the dream. I'm leaving in 5 minutes. I'm going to drive back to the San Juans, back to that clearing, and if you're reading this, and you ever decide to go camping in those mountains near Silverton, off a dirt road about 15 miles from the highway, don't. And if you do, and you find yourself walking in circles, and you see a woman in the forest who looks like me, smiling, standing too still, don't follow her. She's not trying to help you find the way out. She's trying to show you the way deeper in, because I finally understand. There is no out. There's only the loop. Different versions, different clearings, different forests, but it's all the same loop. And once you're in it, you're always in it. You just switch which side you're on. The voices are calling again. I can hear them through my apartment walls. They're whispering the same things they whispered in the forest. And this time, I think I understand what they're saying. They're saying my name, over and over. They're calling me home. Story 5. My name is Sarah Miller. This happened in the summer of 2012, when my brother went missing in the Fish Lake National Forest for a week. When he came back, he wouldn't stop smiling. I need to write this down while I still remember it clearly, while I can still trust my own memory of what happened. Every day that passes, I find myself second-guessing things, wondering if I saw what I think I saw, if things really happened the way I remember them. But I was there. I know what I saw. I know what my brother became. We'd driven out to Utah from Phoenix in early June. Just the 2 of us, me and David. Our parents had divorced 3 years earlier. Mom got remarried to some finance guy in Seattle, and Dad was somewhere in Florida with his girlfriend. David was 24, I was 27. We'd both been working dead-end jobs, living paycheck to paycheck, and we needed to get away. Needed to remember what it felt like to just exist without clocking in somewhere. David found the RV on Craigslist. Some old couple was selling it cheap because they were upgrading. It was a 1998 Winnebago, white with brown stripes, smelled like cigarettes and mildew, but it ran okay. We pooled our money, bought it for $3,000, and headed north. Fish Lake seemed like a good choice. Neither of us had been there before. The pictures online showed these massive aspen groves, lakes, trails that went on for miles, remote enough that we wouldn't run into many people, but not so remote that we'd be completely isolated. Or so we thought. We arrived at the campground on a Tuesday afternoon. The place was called Bowery Creek RV Park, though park was generous. It was just a clearing in the forest with hookups for electricity and water. A bathroom building that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the 90s, and maybe 20 sites scattered among the trees. Only 3 other RVs were there when we pulled in. The woman who ran the place was named Margaret. She came out of the small office building when we arrived. This tall woman in her 60s with gray hair pulled back in a bun. She moved slowly, like her joints hurt, and she had this way of looking at you without really making eye contact, like she was looking at something just over your shoulder. "How long?" she asked. 2 weeks, David said. He was always better at talking to people than I was. He had this easy charm, this way of making people like him without really trying. He was shorter than me, with sandy brown hair that was always a little too long, and he had this habit of running his hand through it when he was thinking. He did it then, standing there in the dust while Margaret filled out our paperwork. "You the only ones here?" I asked. Margaret nodded toward the other RVs. "Couple from Oregon in that one. Been here 3 weeks. Man by himself in that one, says he's writing a book. And 2 guys in the one by the trees, friends from college or something." She handed David a key. "Site 12. That one's good. Gets sun in the morning, shade in the afternoon. Bathrooms open all night, but the showers only work between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. We thanked her and drove to Site 12. It was exactly as she'd described. A level pad of dirt and gravel, a picnic table that was more splinters than wood, and a fire ring made of stacked rocks. The aspens crowded in on 3 sides, their white bark almost glowing in the late afternoon light. The first few days were exactly what we'd needed. We hiked during the day, cooked over the fire at night, played cards inside the RV when it got cold. We saw the other campers occasionally. The couple from Oregon seemed friendly enough, gave us a wave when they walked by. The writer guy kept to himself. The 2 friends spent most of their time fishing at the lake. David seemed happy. Happier than I'd seen him in years. He'd been struggling before the trip. Lost his job at the warehouse in April, couldn't find anything else, was living on my couch and getting more withdrawn every day. But out here, in the forest, he seemed like himself again. He'd wake up early, make coffee on the little stove, sit outside and just watch the light change through the trees. On the 4th day, he decided to hike the lakeshore trail alone. It was about 12 miles, looped around one of the bigger lakes. I'd twisted my ankle the day before. Nothing serious, just needed a day to rest. So I stayed at the RV while he went. "I'll be back by dinner," he said, shouldering his backpack. He'd packed water, some granola bars, his phone, even though there was no service out here. 6 hours, max." "Be careful," I said. He grinned. "Always am." That was the last time I saw my brother. The real David, I mean. When he wasn't back by 7, I started to worry. By 8, I walked over to Margaret's office. She was sitting inside, reading a paperback Western, and she barely looked up when I knocked. My brother went hiking this morning, I said. Lakeshore Trail. He should have been back by now. Margaret set down her book. Cell phones don't work out here. I know, He said 6 hours. It's been 9. Trails clearly marked. Hard to get lost. I know, but give it till morning. If he's not back by then, we'll call the rangers. I didn't sleep that night. I sat outside the RV, kept the fire going, kept checking my watch every 10 minutes. The forest was incredibly dark. Not just dark, black. The kind of darkness where you can't see your hand in front of your face. And it was so quiet. I'd never heard quiet like that before. No cars, no planes, no distant voices. Just the occasional crack of branches, the wind moving through the aspens. Around 3 in the morning, I thought I heard something. Footsteps, maybe, crunching on gravel. I grabbed the flashlight and swept it across the campsite, but there was nothing there. Just trees and shadows. By the time the sun came up, I was already at Margaret's office. She called the rangers, and within an hour there were 2 of them at the campground. A man named Rick, who looked like he was in his 50s, and a younger woman named Jennifer. They took a description of David, asked about his hiking experience, took a photo from my phone. We'll organize a search, Rick said. Get a team out there this afternoon. In the meantime, you stay here. If he comes back, you call us immediately. They left. I stayed. The couple from Oregon came by around noon. The wife brought me a sandwich, which I didn't eat. She was kind about it, didn't ask too many questions, just said they'd keep an eye out. The writer didn't come by, but I saw him standing outside his RV, watching. The 2 friends came by that evening. One of them, shorter with a beard, said they'd seen David the morning he left. Said he seemed in good spirits. The search went on for 3 days. I spent most of that time just sitting outside the RV, waiting. Rangers would come back periodically, give me updates. They'd found his water bottle near the 4-mile marker. They'd found a granola bar wrapper near the lake. But no sign of David himself. On the 4th day, Margaret came by. She stood at the edge of my campsite, hands in the pockets of her jacket, and said, "They're scaling back the search tomorrow. If they don't find anything by tomorrow night, they'll call it off. They can't do that. He's been gone 4 days. They've covered the entire trail, gone off trail, checked every possible route. If he's out there." She trailed off, didn't finish the sentence. I wanted to scream at her, wanted to grab her by the shoulders and shake her. But I just nodded. That night, I heard the footsteps again. 3 in the morning, same as before. Slow, deliberate, coming from the direction of the trail. I grabbed the flashlight and went outside. "David?" The footsteps stopped. "David, is that you?" Nothing. Just that oppressive silence. I went back inside, locked the door, sat in the dark until sunrise. The next day, they found him. Rick came by around noon, and the look on his face told me everything. I felt my stomach drop. Felt that cold dread wash over me. But then he said, "He's alive. We found him about 6 miles off the trail, sitting by a stream. He's dehydrated, little hypothermic, but he's alive." "Where is he?" "They're bringing him down now. Should be here within the hour." "What happened? Where's he been?" Rick hesitated. "He's not really talking. Keeps saying he doesn't remember. They brought him to the campsite in the back of a ranger vehicle. When David stepped out, I almost didn't recognize him. He'd lost weight. He looked gaunt, hollow. His clothes were filthy, torn in places, and his hands were covered in scratches. But it was his face that made me pause. His expression, he was smiling. Not a big smile, not a grin. Just this small, constant upturn of his lips. Like he'd heard a joke and was still quietly amused by it. "David," I said, and I moved toward him. But he just stood there, still smiling, and didn't move to hug me. "Hey, Sarah," he said. "Are you okay? What happened?" I don't know. I don't really remember. Rick said they'd checked him out, that he didn't seem to have any serious injuries. Recommended I take him to the hospital in Richfield, about an hour away, just to be safe. I agreed immediately. I don't need a hospital, David said, still smiling. I'm fine. You were missing for 5 days. Was I? Something about the way he said it made my skin crawl, like he genuinely didn't know, or didn't care. We drove to the hospital. David sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, smiling that small smile. I tried to talk to him, asked him questions about where he'd been, what he remembered. He just kept saying he didn't know. At the hospital, they ran tests, blood work, CT scan, the whole thing. Everything came back normal. The doctor, a tired-looking man in his 40s, said David was dehydrated and malnourished, but otherwise healthy. No signs of head trauma, no drugs in his system, no indication of what might have happened. Sometimes people experience dissociative episodes, the doctor said. Stress, trauma, even just the isolation of being lost in the wilderness. The mind sort of shuts down, protects itself. His memory might come back, might not. But he's okay? Physically, yes. We drove back to the campground that evening. David still wasn't talking much, still had that smile. I kept glancing at him, trying to see something familiar in his face, but it was like looking at a mask. When we got back to the RV, the couple from Oregon came by. They seemed relieved, said they were glad he was safe. David thanked them, still smiling, and they left looking uncomfortable. That night, I made dinner. Just spaghetti, nothing fancy, and we ate in silence. David finished his plate, set down his fork, and looked at me. "You're worried," he said. "Of course I'm worried. You were missing for 5 days. I'm back now. But where were you?" He tilted his head slightly, like he was considering the question. Then he said, "I don't think I was anywhere." "What does that mean?" "I don't know." He stood up, still smiling. "I'm tired. I'm going to sleep." He went into the back bedroom. We'd been taking turns, one person on the fold-out couch, one in the actual bed, and closed the door. I sat there for a long time, listening to the silence, trying to figure out what the hell was happening. The next morning, David was up before me. I found him sitting outside, watching the sunrise. He was still smiling. "Sleep okay?" I asked. "Great. Want some coffee?" "Sure." I made coffee, and we sat there together, not talking. It should have been peaceful, should have felt like those first few days before everything happened, but it didn't. Something was wrong. Something was off. Over the next few days, I started to notice things. Little things at first. David didn't blink as often. I watched him sometimes when he was sitting outside or reading one of the books we'd brought, and I realized he would go minutes without blinking. Just staring, smiling. He didn't react to things normally. One morning, I dropped a plate and it shattered on the floor. I jumped, said, "Shit," started cleaning it up. David just looked over, still smiling, and said, "You dropped that." He wasn't sleeping. I know he wasn't. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and hear him moving around. Or I'd find him sitting outside at 3 a.m, just staring at the trees. When I asked him about it, he'd say he'd been sleeping just fine. And he was always smiling. Always. Even when there was nothing to smile about. Even when I told him I was worried, that something was wrong, that maybe we should go home. He'd just look at me with that smile and say he was fine. On the 3rd day after he came back, the writer came by. He knocked on the RV door around noon, and when I answered, he was standing there looking nervous. "I don't want to freak you out," he said. "But I thought you should know. I've seen your brother." "Okay." "At night. 3, 4 a.m. He's been walking around the campground. Just walking. In circles." My mouth went dry. Are you sure it's him? I'm sure. I've been watching. He walks the same path every night. Starts at your RV, walks down to the bathroom, then to the tree line, then back. Over and over. For hours. Why didn't you say anything? I'm saying something. Now. He glanced over his shoulder, back toward his RV. Look, I'm leaving tomorrow. I was going to stay another week, but I'm leaving tomorrow. And I think you should too. What? Why? He didn't answer, just looked at me for a long moment, then walked away. That night, I pretended to sleep, lay in the fold-out bed with my eyes closed, listening. Around 2 a.m, I heard the door to the back bedroom open. Heard David's footsteps moving through the RV. Heard the main door open and close. I got up and looked out the window. David was walking, slowly, deliberately, following the same path the writer had described. Down to the bathroom building, then to the tree line, then back. His face was tilted up slightly toward the sky, and he was still smiling. I watched him make that circuit 4 times before I went back to bed. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I confronted him. You've been walking around at night. He looked at me, smiled. Have I? The writer told me. He's seen you. Okay. David, what the hell is going on? Nothing's going on. You were missing for 5 days, and now you're acting like a completely different person. You don't sleep, you barely talk, and you won't stop smiling. Something is wrong. He just looked at me, that constant, unwavering smile. Then he said, I'm fine, Sarah. You worry too much. I felt something break inside me then. Some last thread of hope that this was all just stress, just trauma, just something that would pass. Because the way he said it, the tone, the inflection, it wasn't David. It sounded like David, looked like David, but it wasn't him. We're leaving, I said. Tomorrow. I'm done with this place. If that's what you want. That night, I made sure to lock the bedroom door, pushed a chair against it too, just in case. I lay there in the dark, listening, and sure enough, around 2 a.m, I heard him try the door. Heard the handle turn. Heard him push against it. The chair scraped a little, but held. Sarah? His voice came through the door. Still calm, still pleasant, still smiling. I could hear it in his voice. Why did you lock the door? I didn't answer. Sarah? I know you're awake. I held my breath, didn't move. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Okay, good night. I heard him walk away. Heard the main door open and close. And then, when I looked out the window, I saw him standing in the middle of the campsite. Just standing there, facing the RV, smiling. He stood there until sunrise. The next morning, I started packing. Threw everything into bags. Didn't bother organizing anything, just wanted to get the hell out of there. David watched me, but didn't help. We don't have to leave, he said. Yes, we do. It's nice here. David, please, just help me pack. He did, eventually. Moved slowly, mechanically, still smiling. By noon, we had everything loaded. I went to Margaret's office to settle up, and she was sitting there reading the same Western as before. Leaving early? She asked. Yeah, family emergency. She nodded slowly, didn't look at me. How's your brother? He's fine. Good, that's good. She paused, then said, People get lost out here sometimes. Not often, but and sometimes, when they come back, they're different. What do you mean? Just different. Changed. Like something stayed out there and something else came back instead. She finally looked at me, and her eyes were sad. You take care of yourself, Sarah. I paid her and left. Went back to the RV, where David was sitting in the passenger seat, still smiling. I got behind the wheel, started the engine, and drove. We made it about 5 miles before the RV started making a weird noise, a grinding sound coming from the engine. I pulled over, popped the hood, but I didn't know what I was looking at. David got out too, stood beside me, looking at the engine. "We should go back," he said. "We're not going back. Margaret might know someone who can fix it. I'll call a mechanic. We'll have them come to us. There's no service out here." He was right. I checked my phone. No bars. I tried to remember if we'd passed any houses, any businesses, but there was nothing, just forest on both sides of the road. "We can walk back," David said. "It's not far." "No." "Sarah." I said no. He looked at me for a long moment, still smiling. Then he shrugged and got back in the RV. I tried the engine again. It started, but that grinding noise got worse. I drove anyway, slowly, hoping we'd make it to somewhere with cell service. After about a mile, the engine died completely. We sat there in silence for a few minutes. Then David said, "I'll walk back to the campground. Get help. I'll come with you. You should stay with the RV in case someone drives by." "David, I'll be back soon." He got out before I could stop him and started walking. I watched him in the side mirror, watched him get smaller and smaller until he disappeared around a curve in the road. I waited for 3 hours. No one drove by. No one came. Eventually, I got out and started walking in the direction David had gone. It was late afternoon. The sun filtering through the trees at that golden angle that should have been beautiful, but just felt oppressive. The forest pressed in on both sides of the road, and that silence was back. That heavy, suffocating silence. I walked for what felt like miles but was probably only 1 or 2. And then I saw him. David was standing in the middle of the road, about 50 yards ahead. Just standing there, facing away from me. Not moving. "David," I called out. He didn't respond. I walked closer, my heart starting to pound. "David, what are you doing?" When I got within about 20 feet, he turned around, and he was still smiling. But something was wrong with his face. The proportions were off, like someone had tried to copy David's features but didn't quite get them right. His eyes were too far apart, his mouth was too wide, and his smile, that smile that had been constant for days, was stretched even wider now, pulling at the corners in a way that didn't look human. "I've been waiting for you," he said, and his voice was wrong too. Deeper, echoing, like it was coming from somewhere inside a cave. I took a step back. "What are you?" "I'm David." He took a step toward me. "I'm your brother." No, you're not." "I came back, Sarah, just like you wanted." I turned and ran. Didn't think, didn't plan. I heard him behind just me. Ran. Footsteps that were too fast, too heavy. I veered off the road and into the trees, branches whipping at my face, roots trying to trip me. I don't know how long I ran. Minutes, hours. The forest all looked the same. Eventually, I couldn't hear him anymore. Couldn't hear anything except my own breathing. I stopped, leaning against a tree, trying to figure out where I was. That's when I heard it. David's voice, calling from somewhere behind me. "Sarah, where are you?" I didn't answer. Held my breath. "Sarah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you." The voice was moving, circling around me. I pressed myself against the tree, trying to stay quiet. "I know you're there. I can hear you." Then, from directly behind me, "I can smell you." I bolted. Ran deeper into the forest. No idea which direction I was going. The light was failing, the shadows getting longer. I could hear him keeping pace, moving through the trees like he knew exactly where I was. I don't remember finding the road. One moment I was in the trees, the next I was stumbling onto asphalt. I looked both ways. Nothing. No RV, no cars, no signs of civilization. Just road stretching in both directions. I picked a direction and started running. I must have run for another hour before I saw headlights. A truck coming from behind me. I stepped into the road, waving my arms, and it slowed to a stop. An older man rolled down the window, looking concerned. "You okay?" he asked. "I need help. Please. My brother. Something's wrong with my brother." He let me get in. I looked back at the road behind us, at the tree line, but I didn't see David. The man drove me to the nearest town, a tiny place called Kusharem, and we found a gas station with a payphone. I called the police. They searched for David. Searched for days. They found the RV where I'd left it, found our things, found my phone. But they never found David. Never found any trace of him. The police asked me questions. Lots of questions. About what happened. About David's behavior. About what I saw. I told them everything, and I could see in their eyes that they didn't believe me. They thought it was stress, trauma, that I'd imagined the things I'd seen. Maybe I did. Maybe I imagined all of it. That's what I tell myself sometimes, when I'm trying to sleep, when I'm trying to convince myself that my brother just had a psychotic break or got lost again or found some way to disappear. But I know what I saw. I know what was wearing his face in those last days. And I know it's still out there, somewhere in the Fish Lake National Forest. I think about that sometimes. About what Margaret said. About people getting lost. And something else coming back. I think about whatever came out of those woods wearing David's face, still smiling, still walking in circles through the night. I think about the fact that I never actually saw David's body, that he's officially listed as missing, not dead, that somewhere out there, something is walking around with his face. And I think about the fact that 3 weeks after I got home to Phoenix, I got a text from David's phone. Just 3 words. "I'm still here." I never responded. I changed my number, moved to a different apartment, tried to start over. But sometimes, late at night, I'll be walking to my car or taking out the trash, and I'll see someone in the distance who looks like David. Same height, same build, same way of moving. And they're always smiling. I tell myself it's not him, that it can't be him, that what I saw in the forest was impossible, that there has to be a rational explanation. But I know the truth. I know that whatever I found in those woods isn't human. And I know that it's still out there, still smiling, still waiting, still pretending to be my brother.